So two first. Are we ready?
Yeah.
1 second.
You're all set.
Right, so I'm calling the Southborough Select Board meeting to order on July 12th, 2022 at 6:33 p.m. Everyone is present physically except for Ms. Malinowski, who is joining us remotely. All right, we're going to start off tonight with public comment. Do we have any public comment?
No,
Mr.
I'm
Lynn?
afraid you can't escape me.
We don't want to escape you. Come on up.
Just a quick question.
Somebody here as well.
Yes, everyone can hear me. I noticed on your consent agenda, you have an item on the easement for,
We're pulling it.
okay, because I wanted to know more about that.
Okay.
And Mr. Lipp, for the record, if you could just say your address.
Woodland Road.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
I
any
know.
other public comment? Seeing none, let's get going here. Okay, first item is, Katie, can you bring over Acting Chief Newell and Owen O'Brien? Good evening, Acting Chief Newell and Owen.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Okay, so tonight we are here to appoint Owen as the new student of the police department. Everyone should have gotten a memo explaining what allowed us to do this. I assume that it's very clear. Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Owen?
My name is Owen. I've been a lifelong resident in Marlboro. I attended Marlboro High School, where I was a member of the varsity ice hockey team, lacrosse team, and also played golf for 1 year. Following high school, I attended college at the University of Providence in Great Falls, Montana. During my time there, I was a member of the ice hockey team there and studied criminal justice with a concentration in law enforcement. I was also actively involved in the community, volunteering with youth hockey, along with being a member of the Law and Justice Club, as well as serving as club president. I enjoy water skiing and hanging out with my friends as some hobbies. So that's all I got for a little introduction.
Very good. So I take it you went to school in Montana because of hockey?
Yes, that's correct.
So Acting Chief Newell, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, so as you can see, Owen's a great kid. We had over 13 applicants for the open position that opened up after Officer Brendan Campbell left the department. He transferred over to the water department in April of this year. And, Owen was a great fit for the department and for the community, and we think he's going to do a great job. During the background check, we spoke with many people that have known Owen for most of his life, and they all had great things to say about him. One interviewee even said that he hopes that his son grows up to be just like Owen, which was great. And the common descriptions of Owen was that he's a hard worker, a volunteer, and someone who's very trustworthy.
Anyone else?
Great resume. Support the appointment.
Okay, motion?
Actually, so I'll just say, I'm asking that you appoint Mr. Owen O'Brien to the position of student officer for the Southborough Police Department. His compensation would be approximately $700 per week per local 167 contract. And once he graduates from the police academy, he would then transition into a probationary officer within our department, and then immediately begin our 12-week field training program. And then if anybody has any questions for us, we can answer them.
Okay.
Kathy, can I just ask a question?
Yes, Chelsea.
Hi, Owen. Nice to meet you.
Same to
When is
you.
the next academy open?
I can actually answer that.
Okay.
We've been working on this. There hasn't been many openings at all.
Okay.
The most current one we have, there's the Boylston Academy, which is the full academy, and that would start in October. So
Okay.
there are other academies that run for 9 months that would start in September, but obviously we want to get Owen out as soon as possible. So
Okay, great. Thank you. I look forward to supporting your appointment, Owen.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to appoint?
I'll move to appoint Owen O'Brien as acting chief Newell described.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
I think we have to roll call Ms.
Roll call,
Chelsea's.
Chelsea.
Yeah,
Roll
sorry.
call votes. Chelsea?
Aye.
Cook is aye. Lisa?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
5-0 to appoint. So congratulations, Owen. Welcome to Southborough Police Department.
Thank you. And I look forward to joining the team.
congratulations, Owen, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll ask the chief to hang around if you want to talk about the, chief, are you able to, you have to stay on camera, but are you able to stay with us for a little bit?
Yes,
Just when we get to the discussion, quick discussion on my report on Parkerville.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Parkerville Road,
Oh, sure.
yes, okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
So Katie, why don't you move Chief Newell back to the audience for now, so he doesn't have to say and listen to things that he's not particularly interested in, and then we'll bring him back. Okay, right, next, so join us. You sit down. Okay, so next on our agenda is an appointment to the EDC. This is Karen Anglin, 25 Old Road. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we usually, this is very friendly, so we just like to understand, what your background is, why you're interested in EDC, et cetera. And then we'll vote.
Okay.
Okay.
Karen Anglum. I live at 25 Oregon Road. I've been there since 2001. I have 2 children. My son is freshman at Algonquin and my daughter is in 6th grade at Trotter. Been an active participant in the community since my kids started school. So started the Girl Scout troop when she was in kindergarten, still doing that. So it's been 7 years. My son did baseball, so I ran the Little League Snack Shack for a couple of years, did all the expenses, went to BJ's, bought all the pretzels, candy, soda, all that for a couple of years. Then he stopped baseball. I just love volunteering. I did SEF for a couple of years. My job at the time was getting busy, so I stopped SEF, but then now I'm finding myself, I have more time and I'm really interested in more volunteerism. And I thought something like EDC would be good because, my kids are aging out of school, the sports, so get into more of a business role, just learn about local businesses, see how they're run, maybe kind of have a little bit of a part in running the town, seeing how town works.
So why did you pick EDC in particular?
I guess I wanted to meet different people in different circles. So I see the same people at all the sporting events and, so I'm like, maybe it would be nice to have different people. And so I was like, well, maybe the EDC is a more of a business side. I could meet different people there. I think it's important to grow, the development and economic development in Southborough, but, still keep it quaint and charming. And so I'm not quite sure how much, I would be involved with that and decision-making, but it interests me. I'm a new realtor to town too. So the whole business side, maybe learning new businesses that come in, meeting people in businesses. To be honest, that can't hurt me. It's not my only motivation, but so just looking to expand my community involvement, I guess.
Lisa?
Just quickly again, welcome. It's always great to have new people, as Kathy said, step forward. It's exciting for us as well. Have you had an opportunity to watch any of the EDC meetings to kind of see what they're working on?
Yeah.
And does that interest you as well?
Yeah, just 1 or 2. I was on Zoom as a participant. I'm also very friendly with a couple of the members. So I've spoken to them and some of their interests, and they've given me a little bit of the background. So that's why I just was able to hop on a Zoom call as a participant. And then I thought, let's go through the proper channels and see if I could become an actual member.
Thank you. I look forward to supporting you. Thank you, Kathy.
Sam?
Any business background at this point?
No, I was software development for 22 years.
That's business.
Yeah, business, and then, you know, finances through SDF, looking at grants, stuff like that, and running Snack Shack, but software development, and then just got my real estate license this year.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Very impressive. I just have a question that's maybe more for Mark. Is there, do you know, is there, like, was there a recent resignation that opened up a vacancy or?
There's 2 vacancies.
There's
There's
2
a
there.
9-member committee, and there's 2 vacancies.
Okay, because I looked online, I saw 7 members and I was, okay, so it's a 9-member committee. Okay. Well, I think it's a great committee to get involved in, and it sounds like you've got a lot of relevant experience that's going to help the committee, so I look forward to supporting your appointment.
We've got 1 member that's on Zoom, so she's next, Chelsea.
Thank you. Hi, Karen. Nice to meet you. It sounds like you have a different background than some of the members of the committee, so you probably would balance that out nicely. So I look forward to supporting your appointment. Thanks for applying.
Thank you.
So can we have a motion to approve Karen as the newest member of EDC?
I'll move to appoint Karen Anglin, EDC, term to expire 6/30/25.
Second?
Roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye,
Andrew?
Aye.
I put this on 5-0. So welcome.
congratulations.
Thank you so much. You'll get a letter giving you some instructions on how to get sworn in and whatnot. So
Thank you, everybody.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks for coming in.
Okay, next, so do we see Jason? Yeah, we did. So can we bring, Kate, can we bring Jason Melanowski over to the panelist? While he's coming over, we're gonna move up item 6B at the same time, because Jason is part of that too, so we're trying to make his night efficient here. So we're gonna talk about ARPA as we're talking to Jason. Pat McKee's also here too, so we'll help her. I think sit here on that too.
Sorry, Kathy, 6E is
6.
B.
6.
B. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the 3 ARPA things will move up. Okay. Hey, Jason.
Hi, how are you?
Okay. So everyone knows Mr. Melanowski. So he's here tonight, first of all, to propose forming a new ad hoc committee that would focus on studying a project for a new community center. It could be in Woodward, if Woodward is closed, it could be someplace else. So basically to kind of branch off from the new building committee and just focus solely on the community center. Okay, Jason, it's all yours.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. Is everyone hearing an echo?
No.
Nope.
No.
Chelsea's saying yes.
I do.
We're nowhere near each other. Let me try again and see if it goes away. So at the last capital planning committee meeting, we discussed how best to advance all the work that we did on the space needs study that culminated in and around January with the presentation and feedback from multiple user groups. I think everyone's aware that many user groups have different views of where we're at. Some think we're further along than others, and obviously there's some collaboration and candidly consensus that will need to be reached to have any sort of project probably come to fruition from a financial perspective. So we as Capital feel like we have taken it as far as we can, and really feel like if the town is serious about further exploring a community center, we need to do one of 2 things. One is you have a charge in front of you that could, set up a new committee. And I realize, myself included, there maybe are already too many committees studying many different things in this town. So I'm not necessarily advocating you have to go down that route. The other thing you could do is you could wait until Capital becomes a permanent committee, because our codified charge, once that makes the town code, once the AG signs off, does allow us to set up a subcommittee. So you could kind of send it back to Capital and ask us to set up a subcommittee with representation from Recreation, COA, and Library, and others if they feel like it's warranted to further study this. So, we believe it needs to be studied. we believe that the right stakeholders need to be in the room, and given everything else that's been asked of capital, well, we are happy to kind of steer it forward and guide it in a nonpartisan sort of way. We do think that the outside groups that we're kind of looking in before need to have a seat at the table. So I would ask you to do something related to that, whether it be sending it back to us to set up a subcommittee or setting up your own committee that's subject to the appointment of the select board. The final thing I'll say is I personally, sitting as the chair of capital and as the NERI building committee, do not believe doing nothing is an option here. Remember, a key part of the phase we're heading into with MSBA on NERI is they are going to want to understand how we plan to use Woodward moving forward. It may be as a school continuing exactly as it is, or it may be some repurposed capacity. But the main thing they have told us leading up to the entrance into this eligibility period and have continued to reinforce is they monitor community support throughout the process. The only way we're going to know if we have community support is to start creating greater, and more comprehensive plans. So that's the background. I'm happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I'll just sit back and listen to where you may want to go on this.
Well, I'll start. I was pretty happy when I saw this. I actually think this is the right way to go. I think I prefer the ad hoc committee versus waiting till CIPC is formally seated as a standing committee, just because I like to see this going as soon as possible. Jason, I'm surprised you said 9 instead of 7. So let me just push back on the number that you are recommending here.
It's flexible. I just think you're going to have, I think if you open it up to the 5, resident at large seats, I would be surprised if you didn't have a lot of interest, especially if we wait till people get back from summer vacations, because I do think there's a lot of people interested in this topic, as you can tell from candidly the master plan.
All right, I'm still slightly skeptical, but okay. So I would, if we were to reduce it, I would reduce the 5 to 3, leave the specific ones the way you've got them. Okay, so that's all I wanted to comment on as far as that goes, until we hear from everybody else. Lisa?
So I would be in favor of leaving it as 5, and I'll explain why. I think this is going to draw a lot of interest. I agree, though, while people are gone, you're not going to get a lot of interest until people come back. We have a couple choices. If the board feels strongly about putting it at 3, then when we do the interviews, and if we see we have enough, then we can adjust it to 5, or vice versa. So I do think this is going to create a lot of interest. I think from the senior side, from the recreation side. So I guess I'll say that to start, and
Would you rather have the ad hoc or wait till CIPC is a standing committee and have a subcommittee of CIPC? Doesn't matter.
I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, Kathy. I think, if we could put it out now, see who applies now, granted, not until the end of August. I think you have to leave it open until people come back, but at least we can kind of start looking and seeing what kind of interest there is.
All right, so you two are convinced that the only reason I said 5 to 3 is because we have trouble seating committees sometimes.
I agree.
So if you think, I agree, if there's one thing, this really should interest people, I would hope, right? So I'm all for the 9. If majority here thinks that we can get 5, then fine. I think we do. Sam?
Yeah, I guess I waffle between the separate committee here versus the capital, as Jason suggested as an option. I think actually having the separate committee stands a good chance of broadening the input on this some, which I think is important, because this is likely to be a very popular issue as we go forward. So the broader base we have, I think, would be helpful in terms of getting support for whatever comes out of it. So despite the fact that our recent planning process suggested that we should consolidate and decrease the number of committees.
Well, I was going to say that we did refresh off that, right? But this is ad hoc. This is not a permanent committee. So yeah, we heard.
So I think I'm in favor of the separate committee. I guess I like Lisa's suggestion of starting with 7 and changing it depending on the feedback we get. I certainly don't object to 9 if we get 5 strong applicants from the general public. But again, we've had difficulty with some of these things before, so I'd start with 7.
You're saying 7.
Start with 5 at large, 3 at large, total of 7,
Okay.
and then expand depending on the feedback we get.
Okay.
Small typo on the charge, it said 7 and 9.
Yeah, so
Same
that-
places there. So again, I think this is important. I think it's valuable because I think there are some other options out there for this that are worth taking a hard look at. And again, this committee, I think, could do that. So.
Andrew?
Hi, Jason. You think you pretty much started to answer the question that I came into this with, but I just wanted to throw it out there, which is that, do you think now is the right time to do this where there's so many different kind of moving parts going on? And also, if the committee is going to consider, one of the options is another scenario where Woodward School is not available for reuse. So does this get into like actually finding a site somewhere in the town, a brand new piece of real estate where this could be located? And how do you think the committee is going to go about doing that?
So I think we have to do it now to figure out whether Woodward is going to potentially be reused and get the constituent support of the parties that would reuse it. Because there is a possibility that the parties that we think may use it may not think it's a good building to reuse, which completely changes probably the school's thinking in terms of how they approach NERI, and candidly the state on the outside looking in at our process. So that's more on the timing question. Is we have to, Andrew, otherwise we risk the chance of kind of dropping in priority with MSBA if we don't have a good concrete and vetted plan that has public support. In terms of other sites, I would assume that there would be significant public discussion in a formal ruling out of Woodward before we go and do any sort of diligence, because that's going to start costing money. And if, I think we owe it to everyone to pause, reset. So, you could certainly look at, and Ms. Braccio has done a ton of work on capital, looking at the parcels that at least the town owns, which are not many, that are actually suitable for building. But, I do think there are other ideas. I think Sam was getting a little bit at that, that could be outside the box that may not, necessarily require going and purchasing a parcel and doing due diligence on that. I think that's years away at this point if we end up going down that road.
So you think that there's a possibility that a community center could be built on land that the town already owns?
It's certainly possible. It's a puzzle. And you got to put the puzzle together. And the one thing I failed to mention when I started is I think everyone would agree with the following statement. You can't go build a new NERI, a new community center, and do a significant upgrade to the library over the next 10 years. Like, it's just financially not going to be affordable. If anyone disagrees with that, certainly, fire back at me. So what we're trying to do is create, hopefully, a plan that achieves as much of everyone's goals as possible while developing a number that, well, certainly people will think is going to be large. It will always be too large for some group of residents. But if you're getting something from it, you get the seniors involved, the library population, and the school population, I can't imagine too many people you're not benefiting in the community, plus obviously recreation that spans all generations. So that's the end goal. It's pie in the sky, to be completely honest at this point, but we do have a path forward.
I'm not going to come firing at you as far as what you just said, but I'm not quite as unhopeful that we could do everything you listed, but be creative about how we do it too, financially.
Not in the traditional way. We can't do it, is I guess what I meant to say.
I absolutely will add that. Okay, so I agree with that without getting into what we mean by not traditional. Okay, so Chelsea, I'm going to give you a second.
just before we move back, and also on the size of the committee, I would be inclined to just begin now with a charge for 3, so that if there are fewer people that come forward than we think, then we're prepared to seat the committee. Now, I mean, there'll be one meeting in August, right? And then September would be the time where we'd really try to staff up the committee. And then if, as people have said, if there was a great surge of interest, then we could just at that time enlarge the committee.
You end up with not as much of a quorum problem if you have 7.
Correct.
Possibly. That's, my whole thing is, just because of advisory, it was so hard to seat 9 people. And 7 just worked so much better. But if we do have just an outstanding response, then you're right, we'll just increase it. Let's hope. That'd be a good problem to have. Okay, so Chelsea.
Yeah, so I think this is a good idea. I think we need to try to make some progress with all the groups collaborating together. So I think it's a good idea. I would like to see if Youth and Family is interested in having a designated seat on here, given that this potentially will impact their department. I am fine with starting with the 7, whether Youth and Family wants an actual seat or just wants to be at large, however it works out, and then increasing if there's a lot of interest. I think we did that with NERI, and I think it worked out well. I think we had to increase the charge once.
Okay, so it looks like we're pretty optimistic about this, right? So since we are, there's a couple of things that I would propose changing in the charge. One's pretty easy. So if we go down to undercharge, the second bullet, incorporate the potential needs of all relevant town departments, because there's some departments that aren't really affected about with this at all. So I just add the word relevant. Then this is where I'm getting to the creative, and this is part of it. If you go to the next bullet point, it starts with understand on the next page, top of the next page. What I'd like to add at the end of it, including consideration of a private-public partnership. Anybody have an issue? Either one of those?
That's good.
Okay.
Just a question, Kathy, on the first one, incorporate the potential needs of all town departments, boards, committees that were part of the 2021 space needs. So you want to incorporate just relevant. How are we going to define relevant if they were part of the study?
Well, okay, I take it, leave it alone, because you're right. Everybody was part of that study, so leave it alone. The second one was more important to me.
I'm fine with that. Second one's good.
Okay. Okay,
Chelsea, I think that's good.
So, in terms of a private-public partnership, are we, you're saying that this committee would outreach to private entities
not
to see?
necessarily, I just don't want to take it off the table.
Okay.
It's an option. Other towns have done this. Several towns have done it. Sam, at times during some of his public comments has mentioned a couple of them. So I just don't want to take it off the table. So not necessarily, but I want to be there as a consideration.
Okay.
Okay. Jason, anything else?
Nothing from my perspective.
Mark, do you want to comment? I know you were a little skeptical of this.
No, I just, I had a quick conversation with Mr. Malinowski just to try to understand his thought process on this, and I do agree, with the need for this and an understanding of this, because again, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket with their building committee, because we don't know where that's going to end up, and it may just end up that it's something for the school, and we are now sitting months down the road and we have not addressed any of the other issues that we were hoping to get on our side of the discussion. So I fully, after some additional thought and conversation, I do agree with this approach.
Can I ask one other question, Kathy? On the last bullet, and Jason, this is for you. Do you think it's realistic with what this committee needs to do, a preliminary presentation by December, looking at holidays and potentially not seating until September? Just curious on your thoughts on that, if it's kind of a hard date that you were thinking, or?
Aggressive.
It's aggressive, but I think you all know I usually put forward probably more aggressive deadlines. The main rationale is we will know where there will be a MSBA public meeting in December. And we'll know kind of where we stand in the process of what I don't know if it's going to be possible to move from eligibility to feasibility, but if we have, at least we can continue to say this is where we're at as a community, because we are candidly ahead of their process right now. And I do think it's possible, Lisa, if the board commits to seating the committee at their first meeting in September. I obviously am not advocating that you do this in August unless you want to start your interview process. But I think as long as the committee can get going in September, they can always come back and ask for a change in the charge if they think it's relevant and have a good reason to. But I think we should
Okay,
start
I mean,
with the open end.
I think it can be done, Jason. I mean, Sam and I sat on the golf course master plan committee, and I think we had a very short window. And I think we had, what, 17 people? It was a mountain, a lot of people, and we were able to do it. I just was curious, that's all, with the holidays. So, I mean, I'm fine with starting there and changing it if we have to.
It's a preliminary.
Yeah, I'd comment that Jason's point is correct. I think that the expectation is not that there would be a final answer
Yeah.
at that point, but I think it'd be very helpful to know where the committee is, and if it's, not much progress, then you report not much progress for whatever reason. But I think it's helpful to, not only for us, but particularly for the public, to understand how the process is working at a reasonably early point. So I think that you just adjust what you say at that point. Whatever you've got to say, you say it and move on.
And I think that point we need to make clear when we sit the committee.
Yeah.
Because I think otherwise that's a lot of pressure for, a new committee coming together with potentially a 3-month window with the presentation. And I think if we just make that clear, then I'm fine with that.
And I have another follow-up question for Jason. Do you expect that this committee would need to require financial resources in terms of consultants and other people? I mean, when you come down the path and you find out that you need to answer a question that's really difficult to analyze, will you need to come back and ask for money to do due diligence, feasibility studies, etc.?
So the short answer is yes. The good news is, if you remember at the fall town meeting special last year, we actually approved an article as a town from free cash for this exact purpose. There was a requirement we put in there, though, that we said we would come back, and it was geared towards capital, but I think we can all agree that this is a study that's coming out of capital, that we would come back to the select board so that you all understand what we would use it for before the funds were actually used, to just create that option for someone to say, that wasn't really what the intent was. So there is funding in place. And also remember, we're already under contract unless the committee chooses not to go down this way, because we did a designer selection RFQ last year. So the firm that helped us last year could continue and just bolt on to their existing engagement without having to do another procurement process, which also probably helps Lisa's questions on timing if we got to that and needed to look at an existing building.
Is that the firm that helped with the space need study?
Yes.
Okay. And could you remind me what was the amount that was approved by town meeting?
Special town meeting.
It was either 30 or 35,000. I don't have the number handy.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
That's it. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the draft charts as in front of us with the following changes. Second sentence, please want to correct the typo from the 7's written and put number 7 in parentheses. Residents at large, we're going to change it from 5 to 3. On the second page, we're going to add at the end of the first bullet at the Southborough, including consideration of a private-public partnership.
Chair, just one thing to Ms. Malinowski's point. about potentially adding a youth and family services member. Is that something the board is not going to do in this draft of it, but would consider that under appointment for residents at large of trying to ensure that you include someone, or?
I would rather just keep it as the 3 residents at large and that's my own personal opinion, see who comes forward. And
Okay.
And I'm open to talking about that somewhere. as
We can
go
talk,
along.
but let's keep it the way.
I just wanted to be clear, that was the one thing
Can-
before we,
Can we reach out to Youth and Family Market, see if they have an interest, being ex officio and or being added? I'd just be curious what their thoughts are.
and if they have an interest, and again, if we don't have anything in the charge, just to make sure that somebody
Correct.
comes in, and I think that person will be given.
Yeah.
Consideration, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So the motion is on the table. Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Sam?
aye.
Andrew?
I,
And Cook is a 5-0 to approve the draft charge as amended.
And should we push to announce and get appointments made in August?
Okay.
You want
I mean,
to wait?
Let's
People come
put out
back
the
and
advertisement tomorrow, and let's see what we get.
I mean, one model, if you remember the noise bylaw committee, I know this is a completely different committee, but that's one. It took the summer and then by the end, there were quite a few people
Right.
after 2 rounds.
I just think it's important to
Get started?
get started, but also to allow an extension of, the advertisement of this, because I do think there will be people that are away that.
Because I mean, the way the committee, the way you constituted the committee, if you see the designated seats, you have a quorum.
We did.
Yeah.
So you could choose, as Mr. Stiver suggested, you could choose in August, we have these seats, we've got one other resident who's ready to go, and you could decide to move on that and then continue to add as it goes forward. That's something you could do.
Because I think there will be some sort of startup issues in terms of gathering data and so forth that may be fairly efficient for a smaller group to start
They
working
can do
on.
that part, do the homework, get
Yeah.
things teed up for when it's completed.
Yep.
Okay, all right, check. Okay, now, while Jason's here, we're going to take advantage of him being here. Okay, so we're going to move up 6B to now, and we're going to talk about ARPA again. Okay, so I sent the spreadsheet that we're keeping as far as tracking for ARPA is to you guys earlier. We got copies here if you need it. All right, so tonight, let's start with the east one, which is the 7 signs to mark the new historic district. So you saw the email from Jason this week that basically says, I think we're done. They were able to get all 7 signs within the number we have here. I think the actual numbers may be a little bit less than this, but that's fine. Just leave it alone. And, when we know what the availability is, we can adjust this. I don't think it's going to be much adjusted. But the good news is they were able to get the 7 desired signs within the number that was originally quoted. At one point, they could, they doesn't take the trouble now, but they don't. So apparently a little magic was worked and they're back within the budget. Okay. So we've already approved this. There's really nothing to vote on. We've approved it. Jason's just updating us on where that stands. So that's good. FYI. Okay. All right. The second one is, let's go to the Peninsula Trail. So Kat, you want to come up? Introduce yourself.
I'm Kathleen McKee, Trails Committee Chair.
Hello. Okay, we got Jason on Zoom. So you also saw the email from Jason that talked about the vote that Capital took on supporting the Peninsula Trail. The number that is in our ARPA spreadsheet, I have reduced by $50,000 because they got a grant from the state, which was great for $50,000. So the amount of money we believe that they need to build the actual trail is $50,000 less than what was in the original ARPA recommendation. So if you look at the bottom of the spreadsheet, you're going to see where it looks like the select board has $105,000 that we can allocate beyond what the ARPA committee did. And that's consists of this 50 and then the 55 that we reduced the cost of the senior center by. We did that on May 31st because that's where it's coming from. Okay, congratulations, Kat, on getting your grant. Congratulations, you're ready to go. So Capital has basically said they're done. They they vetted this, they've approved it. I doubt that it's gonna cost exactly $194,597, but, you'll see. So I think the main thing at this point is, for us to vote, that we want to use ARPA funds for this. And if we do, then just to make sure that we understand the process from that point on, because it's a pretty big number. I'm going to talk separately. I haven't forgotten about the Sanofi parking spaces. Let's get this part of it out of the way first, right? Okay. All right. Lisa.
I have no further comments other than congratulations on the $50,000 grant. We vetted this pretty good to capital, so
Well, that's true.
yeah, I'm good.
Done.
I'm good.
Sam.
I followed this all along. I think it's a great project. I support it. Don't have other questions.
Andrew.
I also support it, and I don't have any other questions.
Chelsea.
Congratulations, Kat, on getting the grant. That was wonderful. I just have a question for Mr. Purple on the procurement process for this and what kind of happens after we approve this in terms of next steps.
So I'll need to take a look with the, with Trails as to the scope of what we're doing and how we're doing it, and probably work with Ms. Otska in our office on the procurement piece of it and getting that out. I know there's various components to it, so we'll just need to understand how we're doing it and make sure we're doing it correctly. But given the size of this, it's obvious it's going to be a bid, so there'll need to be a formal process on it.
Okay, so what happens if the number changes? Once we go up to bid?
Yeah, I mean, if the number changes and comes in higher than the allocation, then we'll have to come back to the board for additional consideration from ARPA.
And it's going to change, Chelsea. It's either going to be lower, it's going to be higher. It's not going to be exactly.
Right.
So I expect to, so we'll vote for more money if we need to, and if it comes in under, then we'll take the money for some percent.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the motion is to allocate $144,547 of ARPA money to the completion or building of the Peninsula Trail.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Aye.
Sam? Andrew?
Aye.
And Cody's aye. So 5-0 to support allocating $144,597 to the building of the new Peninsula Trail. Okay, part
Congratulations.
one. Part two. Catherine knows how to get things done. So she has gone to Sanofi. If everybody knows, where the trail starts, you're on what I call Pleasant Street, maybe Route 30. You go past New York, there's a parking garage that is Sanofi's, and then there's an open lot, which is where she has gotten Sanofi to agree to give us 8 to 10 spaces marked for people where the trail actually will be marked off, to be used to park and then be across the street and start the trail, right? That parking lot actually is in Southborough, and so is the garage, FYI. So she's got this done. VHB has given her a quote for the appropriate crosswalk that would be needed to cross Route 30 right then. I drive that road every day, that's where I live, and we need a crosswalk there. When you're coming from my house, there's park right there, so people go pretty fast there, so we're gonna want a crosswalk there. I understand that piece of it. We think it's $15,000. We're not gonna vote on it tonight. Capital needs to vet it, which I haven't done yet. So once they vet it, then we will consider that also. But I understand what's needed, and I think it's great that you've gotten Sanofi to agree to do that. The question is, do we want something in writing? Do we want to just have a verbal? It's our spaces. It might make it more complicated with Sanofi if we wanted something in writing, I would think. So we should talk about that piece of it when this comes back to us. Go ahead.
So just to clarify a piece, Sanofi has agreed to share the spaces, but they'll allow us to use the spaces once the crosswalk is in. So we're weeks or a week away from, if the MWA department, I think that Mark was going to sign, sent it in last week, perhaps. So we're a week away from access to this parcel, right? So people can start using the trail pretty soon. So I've asked them if they would consider if the town was able to produce something that would, demonstrate our commitment that we were going to put the crosswalk in, but obviously it takes time to coordinate with public works projects, with funding, and with Mass DOT. Would they consider doing that in advance, allowing us to use the parking in advance of an actual crosswalk installation? So we're waiting to hear back.
And we're gonna move pretty fast. Jason's aware of this. He's just got a pretty full agenda on the 18th. So it's not gonna be there, but they're gonna bring this up pretty quick, even if they do, you know, quick special meeting to do this, and then we will bring it up as soon as it's good. But the capital limit's $10,000 and we want to abide by, that's what we agreed to do. So we will get this piece of it discussed and voted on ASAP.
Okay, so I think that means an August meeting because you're no longer meeting in the rest of July. Is that
Well, we can call quick meetings if we need to for special things. So we'll meet as soon as we know and capital's going to.
Okay.
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 So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, this, I just have to say, the Trails Committee is so grateful for all of the support in town. This has been, I've been on the committee for 5 years. And this is the last piece that we need to put this trail in place. And it's been a long, long time coming. And ARPA funds in general, I think, has been a once in a lifetime opportunity for many people and committees and commissions to get their projects done. So we are really grateful that you're putting the trust in the committee and supporting the community with, you know, to build this trail. So thank you very much.
Jason has his hand here.
Jason?
A long trail.
Jason?
I just wanted to point out, while we don't have time on the 18th agenda, based on what we already posted, we're happy to entertain a special meeting, Kat, when you're ready to discuss it. I would think it would be helpful to have feedback from Karen Galligan, who my guess is she's likely the one that's going to have to implement such a project, just to see, and I know this may go beyond your scope, but I'm happy to send an email after this. It'd be helpful. Just to understand what other crosswalks may be needed in town, just more from a scale perspective as opposed to doing this one-off. So if you need any help getting the forms into us or anything like that, I'll call a meeting as soon as we can after that.
Okay, so did I hear you correctly? You don't have time on the 18th?
No, because it's joint with Public Works Planning Board and it's a very full agenda. I don't think so. And we've agreed to cap our meeting lengths as well, so. But we can do a quick one after that, especially if the legislator extends Zoom meetings. We can do a quick special purpose 15-minute, half-hour meeting if that would be helpful.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kathy, another question. I'd also be interested in parallel here with the conversation with town council to get some input on what we might do to, I guess, solidify the commitment. I think that it's you don't want to go back to Sanofi and say, you know, I need a ironclad, I was going to use that word, but ironclad agreement.
Yeah.
On the other hand, and I'd frankly be willing to take some risk of spending $15,000 to get a few years use out of this and then figuring out later what we do next. But if there's a way that town council could suggest we formalize it to add a little more pressure to make it longer lasting, I think that would be useful. And again, I would not approach them at this point until we have a more specific plan, but I'd be interested in understanding if there's an option there.
Well, not only is Kat a really good salesperson, our sister, this parking lot, they don't use it very much. You know, so that's why I think they want to do it. It's pretty empty for most of the time. They use the garage instead. So I think that's probably their reason to do it. So.
Good.
Well, and their employees, they want to provide the trail access to their employees. Which we agree. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the last, so Jason, you're welcome to stay, but I think we have completed what we need you for. So bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so last one is consideration of using $12,000 of ARPA money to give to the taxation aid committee to allow them to help deserving people, qualified people with the real estate taxes. We talked about this a little bit before. Liz Kesselman specifically has asked for $12,000 that they'd like to use before the November 1st tax bills go out. Brian Valentine had asked us to hold off on this one till he could make sure that he agreed that it was an appropriate use. He's come back and says, yes, it is. So it's fine for us to do this. So Chelsea, he did sign off on that last week.
Yeah,
So,
I talked to him.
okay, so we've been given the green light to do this. So the pot that would come out of is ARPA recommended $70,000 in what they called needs-based, general needs-based individual economic relief. So it would come out of that. So we have 58 left in that bucket if we were to approve $12,000.
So can I ask a question? Do we know specifically how they intend to utilize this $12,000?
Yes,
Okay, go ahead, Sam.
they've gone through their normal process, if I understand, it, Liz Kesselman, and determined there are 12 applicants that they have decided to allocate $1,000 each to, consistent with what they've done in the past. And so again, all they're waiting for is authorization to spend the money. Usually that goes out in November with the tax bills or something. So they know the people and they feel it's the right thing to do.
So Sam, let me ask, is there only 12 people that have applied, or are they gonna open this up to others that may
I
be
think-
in a need, but
I think their window is closed for this time, so people applied, and I don't know if they had more applicants and they determined the need was not there as much for the others, but they've gone through the same process that they've gone through in prior years, where they've given $1,000 awards each to people. I think they gave 8 last year or something, as I recall. I can't quite remember.
so do you know what they would give if they didn't have this 12?
Don't know whether they would cut out some of the people.
Right, that's kind of
Give
where
less
I'm
to
going.
everybody, yeah.
Or if having the 12 gives the opportunity with funds they'd already had to actually increase it from 12 people to potentially, if there's more others that are qualified.
They don't believe they have additional funds beyond this. They've got a trust fund that they're trying to protect.
And that's got about $30,000 and a little bit more than that. So that's what they're trying to not dip into.
So they're looking to utilize this $12,000 for this year and then reserve the rest for future years when they may not have.
And fundraise too. I think that the
Okay.
committee is now being more active in terms of looking for other sources. They have a check off on the tax bills that has produced very little revenue. So they're trying to figure out ways to do that more effectively and to get maybe some corporate sponsors for the program, local businesses, et cetera.
Okay.
So that's their current goal.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Andrew,
I am supportive of this. Don't have any further questions.
Chelsea?
Just a few comments. I'm supportive of this. But I just want to note the requirements to apply for this program per their application is you must own and currently occupy your residence in Southborough for more than 5 years. You or your spouse must be a minimum of 65 years of age, or you have a state recognized disability. And your income cannot exceed 30,000 per individual, 60,000 for total household. So I think as we look to how we're gonna fund, or what we're gonna fund for the other remaining out of this bucket, we just need to be cognizant of what pool we're getting here and how we would open it up to kind of anyone in need on something additional. I think this is great. I think it's already an avenue for us to be able to help people, but I just want to make sure that you understand what the application requires.
Noted. Okay. All right, motion to approve $12,000 of ARPA funds to allocate to the taxation relief committee to be allocated immediately so they can use to offset the November 1st tax bills.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just, sorry, just one other thing. I just want to make sure, sorry, I'm getting feedback when I talk. I don't know why. If we can make sure that it gets expended for this first tax bill. I just want to make sure all the money gets used and it doesn't roll over.
They asked for the second tax bill. You know, we start tax bills from August 1st, November 1st, so it's actually second bill fiscal year.
Okay, that's fine. Just within this fiscal year. So
That's what some motion said that.
They've allocated it to individuals, and so they expect to move that money.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, roll call vote. Chelsea?
Aye.
Cook is aye. Lisa?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
And 5-0 to approve $12,000 of ARPA to the taxation relief committee. All right.
Just as warrant ARPA, just one question. When do you anticipate the request from Shopsy being discussed?
when I can get a understanding of truly what they're asking for. I still, I mean, I've gotten 2 letters now, right? And I still have questions, so I just got to get Dorian on the phone and try to truly understand, because it still sounds to me like it's a position, or it's admin, or something, so I just, I'm struggling with trying to understand, you know, what they really want, so I can be coherent about this. So I will talk, so there's no reason to think we won't do it next meeting.
Okay, that's what I'm just looking for clarification. It's
Because
been
we've got to keep this
tossing
going,
and-
you know, every meeting we should, or at least every other meeting, we should be talking about, you know, more ARPA.
I'm sorry, I didn't completely hear what you said. So
Okay.
you're giving a preview of coming attractions for the next
Yes, so,
August meeting, what will be the
okay, you're on
item?
Shopsy now, right?
Yes,
Okay, Shopsy has asked for $8,500 of ARPA money to be allocated to help them with a consultant to do various things. ARPA did consider the request, they actually did send it to ARPA, and ARPA said no, the committee said no.
okay,
Shopsy thinks that the no was for the wrong reason, that they didn't quite understand what they were asking. So I had asked Joanne, the chair, to send a letter, and she did right away. It's just, it's still not saying what I think it should say for this one-shot use of it. So this needs to be clarified. Okay,
okay,
so
thank you.
I just want to make sure it
we're
doesn't
gonna get it on there.
fall off, because with the MBTA communities, we need to start moving things forward, so that's all.
August 9th.
August 9th. Okay, all right, so moving on. Chair's report. Oh, so I'm excited.
signature.
Yes,
Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we did. That's the first one.
sorry, I missed it.
There's nothing, we already voted on that, we just think, you know, it's done, they got it in under they can do the full 7, and it's done deal.
With the amendment that you're going to install all the sign marks, so that's what it
That
says.
was part of it.
So I'll pound the post in if you hold, if you hold the post.
He'll
how's that?
bring his backhoe over and dig the holes in. Okay, so chair's report, so I'm excited about this. So Lisa and Chelsea had already been down to the Foxborough Emergency Regional Communication Center, ERCC, is that right?
Yes.
Acronym? To see what Sam and Andrew and I saw last Friday. We went down with Chief Achilles and Acting Chief Newell and Mark to see the facility in Foxborough, which right now houses the communications, emergency communications for 4 towns, right? So Foxborough, Mansfield, Norwell, and Easton, I believe, are the 4 that are down there. right now.
Norton,
Norton.
Easton.
Norton, okay, instead of Norwell, okay, all right. See, I think Norton is what's coming. I think it's Norwell right now, but who cares, right? I think Norton is the one of the new ones that's coming. But
Four
who
of them.
cares? Who
Whatever.
cares? It's 4, right? Who
Okay.
cares? It's an N, agree, N-O. So I'm just gonna say, I was blown away, totally blown away. It's in a nuclear bunker, so what a perfect place for it, right? The person who did our tour was, my guess, he is an engineer by background. He was very matter of fact. I heard one of our group calling him a salesman. I didn't think he was a salesman at all. I thought he just answered questions. You know, we went down there, he didn't invite us down there. We said, can we come? And he gave us a tour. He even showed us how the SOS system works with his cell phone, which I thought was pretty great. We saw all his medical stuff right on the screen.
Uh-oh.
Katie.
Halt here for a moment.
No, all still good.
Nope, it's all good.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm continuing. So. Right, still my thunder here. I'm very excited about this. We asked a lot of questions. I think we did anyway. Mine were typically, more on the financial side. But he clearly said that, one choice we have as far as deciding what to do with possibly regionalizing dispatch is they absolutely have room for us to join that group. And just because we're not contiguous physically, it doesn't matter. He said they've got room for the whole state, if the whole state wants to do it. And it looked like it, we saw a big room and then there's another room they can add to it. So it's a big place, but it was just so high tech. It's, you see the CIA and all the stuff on, we watch shows like 20/40 solo screens. It was just so impressive. They've got total redundancy with Duxbury. So if something were to hit them, they can throw it over to Duxbury. So I just thought it was eye-opening. And so I hope, it's my understanding there's a report that we're about to get from this consultant. And when we got back, it sounded like that choice wasn't gonna be on there. I really hope it is, as far as what we could do here, because the numbers were pretty clear as far as what we have to pay. I think we save some money, but we get so much more out of it, and we don't have to wait 8 or 9 years to do it. So I really think that it should be one of the considerations we do when we really try to make this decision. But I was just blown away, totally.
Yeah, and I think too is to look at the upgrades we're gonna need at the current
Of
public
course,
safety
of
for
course.
these and the cost of that as well.
So you got the salary, the 24-hour dispatcher, right? Add that up. That's pretty easy to add up. And then you've got the depreciated equipment that's going to be depreciated pretty soon. So you got to replace all that. So it's a number. But on top of that, I think we save money, especially they've got 2 more towns that are about to join them. So they're about to have 6, I think. There's a board. Every town has a seat on the board, right? So he described how the governments work. He said they've got a capital reserve, so they've got money there to replace it when it's time to do it. So I just thought, it was true. I had no idea that's what we're going to see.
And it's great that you kind of go into the woods and you
Yeah.
literally
Oh,
think
what a
you're in the
turnout.
wrong place. And
She
then-
said, I don't know, I gotta be careful making the turn. We go, well, why? And then we saw why. My gosh, how could you find that? So it's definitely going ahead.
Yeah.
As far as where it is, no doubt about it. So anyway, so Sam, what do you think?
I thought it was very interesting. I actually seen places like that before, so I was, I guess, less stunned by the technology, but I think that it's an interesting choice, and it seems to me that it's worth considering that on the list. I'm not sure what our current group is looking at in terms of options, but it sure seems to me like this might be one of them, and then we could certainly stay with what we have. We could join the local group. It's not maybe clear exactly how many people are going to do the local group. I think there's some politics involved with the local group in terms of people sort of wanting it in their town kind of thing, which sometimes affects the economics in interesting ways. Interesting too, in terms of cooperation with the local group of towns that we have, because again, in terms of public safety, there's a lot of cooperation between Southborough and surrounding towns. And if we were not to participate with that group, then that might create some friction there. Not clear exactly how that would play out or what that might mean for us. But economically, I think the trend is clear. The state's pushing hard to consolidate these kinds of centers around the state. There's money for that. And the gentleman who gave us the tour was very articulate about the grant process for funding these kinds of consolidations. And it sure sounds like there's a lot more money for increasing the size of centers like Foxborough, for example, versus building new centers around. And the thing that gives us an opportunity, I think, is if you look at the map of where the regional centers are, we're sort of in the middle of a hole here. So if the state was interested in more coverage for regional, this would be a place, whether it's Southborough, Westborough, Marlborough, wherever, this area would be a place that they would look to fill that hole. So that might help our grant prospects. But I think, again, it's economically, just, top of the, back of the envelope kind of thing. It sure looks like this could be a cost-effective thing for us to do. And I would hope that the group studying this issue looks closely at the Foxborough choice.
I just want it to be considered, right, as one of the options. But, he said the grants, their whole thing was paid for by grant. They got like $9 million. He said that money is going away. So there's like 3 tiers of grants, and the people who get money now are the ones that do hook on to existing centers, so that's where they get the money. So anyway, but no, I was just truly.
But the facility was impressive in terms of it was an AT&T facility built long ago to actually be nuclear hardened for a nuclear explosion in Boston. So the concrete is like 3 feet thick. They've got multiple feeds for fiber and power and backup and so on and so forth. So something that it would be extraordinarily expensive to duplicate if you had to build something like that from scratch. So interesting option and worth very serious consideration.
Andrew?
Just the one thing I would add for the benefit of the viewing public was one of the thought-provoking statistics that was thrown out there by the director was that how the state of California has about 40 of these types of, there was an acronym.
PSAP.
ESAP.
PSAP.
PSAP, okay. Yeah, a response center to handle these types of dispatch calls. 40 of those types of PSAPs for a population of about 40 million people.
Yeah.
Massachusetts has over 100 PSAPs. So it
7
was
million people.
for 7, yeah, so it was very thought provoking about how there's obviously tremendous efficiencies that can be gained. And also better, reliability, meeting professional standards from having an operation like that. So I definitely think, I agree that joining this center is something that we should consider, but also, there have been other interesting suggestions that Chief Achilles also mentioned. So we're nowhere near really, I think, close to making a firm decision on it, but I'm very glad I went, and it did kind of pique my interest in regional dispatch.
And Kathy, if I could add, one of the concerns I had was that a local dispatch center, I think of as having much closer connection to the idiosyncrasies of the town. And so the people and the locations very well. And we talked about that on Friday some. And I was very impressed with the ability of the staff there and the systems there to actually have information in extraordinarily great detail about people, locations, et cetera, that I think that at least mitigated my concerns for being able to replicate that from someplace not physically in Southborough with Southborough paid staff.
Well, and to kind of complete your thought, I'm remembering that the director, when that question was raised, he said he can't think of a single time from that dispatch center where they were not able to respond appropriately based on a local landmark that people in the center did not know, and said it was more frequent that they were corrected, the people calling the center, about where they weren't actually where they thought they were. And using all their technology, they were better able to locate the scene of the emergency than the caller.
Can I add one last thought too? So obviously, I'm very supportive of exploring this. One of the things I think from when I visited that stuck with me was the opportunity for, as a call came in, you had the person that stayed on the phone, and then somebody else walked up from another station and started dispatching for them. So, there was a lot of things happening at the same time, but the person that was going through whatever issue that was being had was comforted the whole time by having the same voice on the phone, not saying, hold on, let me do this, or hold on, let me do that. So to me, that was really, really important to see.
More effective response there.
So we were in the car with Chief Achilles, that's exactly what he told us on the way down. You don't want dispatcher having to handle simultaneous calls. It's too hard. What if he gets 3 calls? What do you do? So this would basically obviate that issue. So anyway, so Chelsea, you want to make a comment? I know you've been down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you all know that I've been pretty involved with this process and was very impressed when I went a few months ago. I think as somebody who listens to a lot of scanners and handoffs between towns, between dispatchers, I think there's a lot of value in operationally how this works. I think from a financial perspective, we're going to lose our individual dispatch grant at some point as they continue to move to regional. So there's that component as well. But I think we're just going to get a better service for the residents, and it's going to be seamless to them. So I'm very supportive of continuing to go down this path, and I'm glad that you all had the opportunity to see it so we can all make an informed decision when it's decision time.
I'll just close on that, Chelsea. I think the one thing people may miss, and it's a further discussion down the road, is walking in and having somebody sitting there and being able to ask a question or whatever.
And we talked about that.
Okay, yeah, Foxborough actually has somebody that sits there.
Acting Chief Newell was very interested in, how that would work out.
Yeah.
When that question got asked, so our guy basically went through what the participating towns do for that position. A couple have one had a civilian, I think two had policemen, sworn officers, and I forget, the fourth one was maybe some quasi. So the four towns did different things as far as that goes. So that would be a consideration, what you would do with it, because you've got to have someone there, right? And somebody walks in the door, so absolutely has to be considered. And that question did get asked.
Interesting option, certainly.
Absolutely. No, I know, time well spent. Okay, moving on. So, Andrew, you want to talk about the stat concern with cars?
Sure, just very briefly, this is an item that Mr. Litt had brought to my attention. He has made some observations in the past, let's say 3 or 4 months, of a lot of vehicles that park on the sidewalk and obstruct the sidewalk. And it looked like a lot of them were really on the southern part of town where it's a little bit more densely populated, but I know Tim had heard some other examples that were elsewhere. And the reason I wanted to just note it under a member's report is he's put together a presentation that really shows that this practice really does obstruct access for example, for people that might be using a wheelchair. And I know Tim has brought it to the attention of Acting Chief Newell, but there's only so much that the police can do when responding on an incident by incident basis. So it looks like to do something to help, although I can't think specifically of right now of a really concrete thing that we could do to help. Although I know that Tim is presenting this issue to the SPAC, Southborough Public Accessibility Committee, on their meeting coming up on July 25th, I think. So that's the gist of what I have to report on that.
And I think as we increase sidewalks, it's only going to get worse.
But one thing, Andrew, you might consider is, there aren't an infinite number of landscape firms around. So I
Yeah,
bet if we
that's
could
something I thought of.
send a letter
Yeah,
from the town to at least the landscapers we can identify, reminding them that something that they need to consider and to ask them to be more considerate for that. That can't hurt, at least.
It's an enforcement issue.
I think it's an education issue.
Education and enforcement, and we've had some enforcement. There have been complaints, and I've seen Acting Chief who will follow up and communicate with landscapers, and claims he's gotten positive response, although not clear the follow-up from that. But I think that's, again, combination of approaches like that, I think has some opportunity.
It's more than just landscaping.
I understand, but that's a good place to start. So, but I'm not sure there's a perfect ultimate solution.
Andrew, when is it on the agenda? Sorry.
July 25th.
All right, so maybe we can tune in and
All right, let's see what they
see
come
what
up
they
with.
come up with in the discussion.
I try to go to those meetings, and I'll try to make that.
So you'll report back to us on the official,
I will try.
okay. Or Anderson, see what your issue.
Do you want to do it?
I will be out of town on.
I'll be watching it anyway, so.
Okay, Lisa, update on trees.
Okay, I'm gonna try to keep this brief. So I first want to thank Ms. Luttrell. There was a little snafu with posting the hearing for the next round. Ms. Luttrell was wonderful in working with me to trying to find a solution. Per our policy, before planning board gets a submission for hearing, the tree warden is supposed to, not the tree warden, excuse me, the arborist is supposed to walk the trees. Well, we missed that step. So Ms. Luttrell brought it to my attention. We don't want to stop the process from moving forward. So her and I actually spent over 3 hours today walking and looking at all of the trees that were on the submission. So we had sent to Karen today a list of, out of the, I think it was 23 trees, roughly 9, we're going to ask the arborist to see. So the others were
Clearly dead.
clearly dead, or we've come up with a new term, Sam. Dead is no leaves. With leaves is death is imminent. So it's easier that way, but so.
So if I still have some hair, I could be declared as eminent.
Yes, there you go. So that being said, I have an updated list that we sent over to Karen today. We cross-checked it with the current arborist lists that were done and are currently on the DPW website. I believe all, but maybe one of these are on scenic roads. I think they all are actually. So we should be good as we move forward. Karen is working to set a date that Mimi and I can go and walk with the arborist. We just had some general questions on the health of the tree, and some were dual trees that have separating one. So that's good for that. Also, just to update the board, we're still moving forward. Obviously, we had vacation, I had vacation. So we're meeting this week to start working in again on getting a process, and hopefully having something that I can bring back to the board and she can bring back to the board at potentially our August meeting. So it'll be done well before town meeting, and it's just codifying and solidifying what the state basically does. But again, short steps. We're not looking to recreate a wheel. We're looking for something short that somebody can look at and say, this is what I
So
need
we're
to do.
headed toward a joint hearing for the
August 9th,
list of
yeah.
trees.
August 9th. And
Okay.
also that, just to add to that, thank you, Sam, is there are 72, I believe it is, dead trees that the arborist has already looked at. So we're looking to do, I talked to Kathy tonight about doing actually 2 hearings. One, keeping the request list from citizens separate,
Yeah.
and then doing 72 dead that the arborist doesn't have to look at
Yeah.
because it came from an arborist list.
Yeah.
And the majority of those, I think all but one are on a scenic road on those. So we should be able to whip those out. So the goal would be to have Karen get costs once that piece is done and bring something to town meeting with a cost and get those 72 trees
So
done.
she would look for a budget approval, special town meeting.
Yeah.
To take
That-
care
that's
of those trees.
One of the things on my list for the discussion coming up, yeah, to knock those out because the arborist has already opined on those, and it should be relatively quick for those. So that's
So
it. for
Lisa,
trees.
is the planning board going to keep the article that they had ready for town meeting
Yes.
and change it, or are they starting over?
No, they're gonna keep the same article because I never actually presented it to town meeting. Mimi's kind of been tweaking it, and the planning board has been tweaking it as they went along. Once we have the process in place, that should tie right into their bylaw. And it should be relatively easy for people to support because, I mean, it is what currently the law is. It's combining the chapter 87 and the chapter 40. So, and we hope again to have something to bring back to both boards by August.
And I think the big point is, and a lot of confusion has been, that I think the goal is to make this consistent with state law.
Correct.
That has been in place for some time and not clear that we've been
Correct.
following that consistently.
And the thing that will help too is we've mentioned is the paving software. You can actually, that's gonna help for people to understand where the right of way is. Because it's tough, you know, Mimi's talked to other towns as well, and some of the towns, they go by stone walls. I mean, those, it's so hard unless you have your own property surveyed. So again,
Particularly for, not urban towns, I've actually talked to a couple of DPW superintendents about it. And they basically say, we don't really know.
correct.
And our assumption is it's a public shade tree, and if a resident thinks differently, they can do the survey and prove otherwise, but our initial assumption is it's a public shade tree, and that is what drives the decision process.
Yeah, and one other thing we talked about adding in as we kind of do this is more of a policy-based decision. But if we take a tree down, it should be the policy of the town to put another tree back in its place. You know,
An interesting concept there in the sense that as I've listened to the planning board talk about that, you might even make that more precise and say, if you take down a tree that, 2 feet in diameter, you put in the same diameter, basically 2 trees that are 6 inches or a foot in diameter, kind of thing. So you replace the size basically with
Yeah.
more trees of a similar size kind of thing. So you're basically keeping the same sort of volume, if you will,
Yeah.
of trees.
I'm all for replacing trees, but that's a pretty expensive proposition to replace a big tree.
Big
with a
tree.
big
I
tree.
That's right, yeah.
Really-
and you have to, with forestry, they're supposed to be so far apart
Yeah.
for them to actually.
You don't have to put it in the same place, but if you put, remove a big tree, you plant 6 other trees that are smaller, but
Yeah.
in total, they're roughly the same size in other places.
Yeah.
It's a concept that others have done. I'm not suggesting that that's the right answer, the best answer, but it's worth talking about.
And, like we had one gentleman came out today and he is hoping that the arborist will say there's something that can be done to save the tree. Because he really likes the tree, and through a microburst years ago, a bunch of his trees came down. He's offering to put another tree. What, can I do it? Or can the town do it, or who? So I think if we have a policy in place that just makes the most sense. It's tough for a homeowner to put a tree in and then have no say over said tree as well. So lots of things to think about, but we're moving forward in the right direction on lots of ultimately positive things going. So
So Lisa, I know this has taken a ton of time for you to do this, so I really appreciate all the effort and to walk around with these few trees.
Well, thank Mimi. She,
Well, I know,
she,
maybe you're here, we think you too, but
Yeah.
you're on the select board, so you're our person, so.
Not only a ton of time, but it's been a very popular and controversial issue in a lot of ways. So it's-
it has, and I'll just throw one other thank you out there as well for the 70, I think it's 72 trees when I went and did the math on it. Deb DeMaria actually put a spreadsheet together already for the hearing that lists the GIS points.
Yep.
I mean, she did that today. I got that just before we came. So again, great collaboration. That's the takeaway, that if there's any takeaway from all of this, is how planning board and the BOS or sorry, select board are collaborating to move this forward in a way that benefits all of us.
It's just disappointing that the town doesn't use wood to heat the buildings, so we can recycle the trees into.
We may get there.
Save oil.
You know, but anyway, good stuff. So thank you. That's all.
So just to summarize, that the hearing on the 9th is going to be one kind of omnibus hearing that's going to consider a list where this list has been so vetted already by people who are very interested in this, that the trees here are not controversial there. Are these the dead trees?
So there's going to be two. Like I said, there's two hearings. One is the
Okay.
arborist has already deemed them dead. It's not just poor. There's a ton more, hundreds more,
Oh,
Andrew,
yes.
that are in poor shape that he
Okay.
eventually should be removed, but dead, he is deemed 72, I think it is, dead.
So, okay,
So that's going to be one hearing that should be relatively brief. And then the second hearing it's the second part to when we did the non-scenic road hearings, when Kathy was first on the board. Now you're doing the scenic road piece of citizen requests to have trees taken down, looked at, trimmed.
okay, that potentially takes more time.
It could.
But because the hearing is going to be preceded by a notice,
Correct.
and then we'll know whether or not there's an objection before the hearing.
I would assume so, because it'll be posted
And does,
on the trees.
because, okay, so this is subject to the requirements of the Scenic Road Act and the
Mhm.
Shade Tree Act. So this will be preceded by a published notice in the
Mhm.
newspaper.
And that's why we were kind of
Okay.
rushing on the 72 trees, because we wanted to do them all at the same time, but still meet the requirements of the posting.
And so then, coming out of this August 9 meeting is going to be, there is a consensus, there has been approval from the select board and the planning
Yep.
board to remove, trim, et cetera, this list of uncontroversial trees, and then Karen can use that information to get a budget to actually
Yep.
get that work done. And
Correct.
that could be even taken care of at the, either as part of the FY 24 budget or fall town meeting.
Fall town meeting,
23.
23, because you want to
23.
start, the planning board request was not to take any of the trees down from our prior hearing or this hearing until the fall.
You probably
So
wanna
that's
take it-
excellent. That's good
Yeah,
news.
you want to take it down in the fall after the leaves have fallen too.
Yeah, so this
And
is
there's no
clearing a
babies
huge
or-
backlog.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
Yeah.
Andrew, anybody could object at that second hearing, even though you published it and you don't
Sure.
think there's a problem. But at the hearing, someone could hold their hands.
but just, I'm just trying to summarize, the gist of it is, we're gonna, because I have heard repeatedly, and I've just observed with my own eyes, that there are a lot of trees that are dead, and that if everyone, if you spent the time to do what you and Mimi and Debbie have done, you could put them on a list. You could post them there, theoretically, no one should really object.
Right.
And then we can approve it, and then we have cleared the way, and then that'll improve the whole discussion of the issue.
Yes, so for the arborist list, those are on the DPW website. That is an outside arborist that was brought in through Maya grants, wasn't it, Mark?
Yes.
So,
Okay, that was
and
a
they,
while
every
ago, right?
year, no, they do it like
Oh,
every year,
okay.
they pick select streets and they do them.
Okay,
And he gives, there's pictures, there's coordinates. I mean, he's very specific on the trees. Dead
all right.
is dead, not death is imminent. He doesn't do death is imminent, but we kind of like that one, so. But anyway, so yeah, hopefully, Andrew, the majority of these trees
Yeah.
aren't gonna be, I mean, the dead, it was pretty obvious they were dead when we walked today. I mean, there wasn't, other than the bittersweet that's wrapped around and killed the tree and pulled the branches down, most of them don't have hardly
Okay.
a leaf on them.
Well, just second what Kathy said that you deserve a lot of credit for taking all the time to do this. It's gonna help, it's gonna help the discussion going forward.
Thank you. All right, I didn't mean to take up as much time as I
No,
did.
this is
Sorry,
important.
Kathy.
This is important. Chelsea?
Thanks, Lisa, for coordinating all this. I just have a process question and a financial question. So would these 72 trees go out on one bid package?
I guess that's a Mark question, because I don't think we've really talked about like the 23 trees that are the requests of the citizens. There are a bunch of dead trees within that.
Okay.
Chelsea, you would think there is some economy of scale of, one big big coming in for,
Yeah.
whatever it takes.
Right.
and just get it done. I would think you
Yes.
save money by, doing
Yeah,
all
this is
of
just-
it.
This is
Lisa, are
just-
you viewing this as a one-time capital item, and then we would add some component as part of the operational budget to maintain? I just want to make sure that we're following whatever process we should in terms of the financial aspect.
So I think, Chelsea, the 72 trees is a catch up. I mean, those arborist reports go back to, I think, 2019. It's definitely 2019, maybe it's 20 and 21. There's 3 of them out
Mhm.
there that we combined. So you get a new one every year, but I just don't know how you would specifically budget for that without, I don't know what time frame he has in getting the list completed.
Or would
So-
would we do this as like John Parent's maintenance article for trees and have it roll over every year? I just want to make sure whatever we do for, and I know this is in the fall town, this is at least is on my list for how we're going to finance this in the fall town meeting discussion, but I want to make sure whatever we set up for fall town meeting, then we have a mechanism to actually execute after we did all this work on getting it approved.
Honestly, Chelsea, I completely agree with you, but I haven't got past looking at trees
Okay.
and things like the process. So
All right, fair enough.
certainly welcome from suggestions on the board on what the best way to move forward
So we'll
is.
get to it, but Chelsea's idea is interesting,
Yeah.
have it more on facilities on America, so it just sits there and you use it, so there's always gonna be
Huge.
money there to take down trees.
Huge backlog of trees. So it seems to me that some ongoing commitment to do that. And then maybe you do a catch up with some ARPA money for the backlog here. Potentially. One time catch up, but again, to be discussed.
Yeah, I mean, and some of the issues, I think one of the trees actually Grid would take down. It was like, I don't know how this tree stayed up. It's dead anyway, but it touches every single wire, even the telephone wires.
Wow.
And the Grid, I guess, it was on the notes that we had that Grid is willing to work with and take that down. So, hey, I'm always willing to, let somebody else pay for one of them, because that's a pretty tricky tree.
We actually have, I think, 3 or 4 dead trees on the causeways that belong to DCR. That would be great to find a way to get them to take some of these things down.
Right, but long story short, we turned the corner, we're making progress, we're starting to get the process in place to deal with this issue, how important trees are. And so this is all good news,
It is
We're
good
gonna solve it overnight, but this is progress.
Step in the right direction.
All righty, Mark.
Madam Chair, I'll try to be brief. First one is a fall on sword item. When the communication officer's contract, the successor agreement was done, somehow we got through the MOA and the contract document, and no one noticed that the implementation dates for the new lead dispatch stipend were off. And they begin a year late, and they conclude a year after the contract expires. So I had spoken with Labor Council and needed to redo the contract. It does not need to be revoted by the board. It's in your signature file this evening to be signed by the board, will then be countersigned by the union, and then copies will be provided. So not a fatal flaw, but it's something that needs to be corrected. So I appreciate, that was actually caught while I was gone. So that was nice to see the emails when I came back. I'm just gonna jump to the third thing and come back to the second one last. In your packet was a memo from Ms. Otska regarding the meeting dates for the remainder of 2022. Since that was issued, there's a couple of things just to point out. some of which board members have indicated to me. The September 6th date is the election primary. So the suggestion would be for that meeting to be September 7th instead of the 6th. And October 4th is, I believe, Yom Kippur, so the 4th and the 5th. We get into that holiday. Given that we have town
You're sure
meeting.
about that? Because Chelsea
It's
checked it.
It's
and I thought we were okay.
Yes,
It is?
but it begins the night of the
Night, that's
fourth.
true, right, sundown.
That's the problem, it begins the night of the
Yeah.
fourth. So,
Okay.
given that you've got special town meeting on the 13th and meeting again on the 18th, may want to, you could either the 3rd or the 6th. I'd probably suggest the 3rd. Just because if you get into the 6th, you're getting kind of close to the special town meeting, you
Right.
do that break. So
Yeah.
I would suggest the 3rd there. And otherwise, I think everything else lines up pretty well.
All right, so can you redo that schedule and send it back out to us?
Absolutely.
Everybody okay with
I
that?
will not be available for October 3rd.
All right.
Okay, all right. Last item that I had, I did reach out to MassDOT regarding the special speed regulation for Parkerville Road. Received a very nice email back, which I did put in the packet from Mr. Frawley through Ms. DeLorean. And it's very simple. If we choose to remove a special speed regulation, we need to make a written request to MassDOT and to rescind it and revert it back to a statutory speed limit. Told us where to send it, and I assume that would be done in fairly short order. The second paragraph of his response was the more interesting piece, and I wanted to make sure the board was aware. And I'll just, it's very brief, I'll read it. As these requests have become more frequent with MGL Chapter 90, Section 17C, we want to remind communities that there are differences in how statutory speed limits must be enforced. As stated in Mass DOT's procedures for speed zoning, quote, the distance requirements associated with the enforcement of MGL Chapter 90, Section 17 should be noted. Instantaneous radar or laser readings are not adequate. To be in violation, the motor vehicle must be shown to have been in excess of these speed limits for at least the entire distance associated with each respective speed limit. For thickly settled areas, which this is, the distance is 1/8 of a mile.
That's 660 feet.
So
That's
that
two-
affects, that affects the, the potential enforcement,
Right.
that you could have on that.
And I did ask Acting Chief Newell about that.
Yeah.
He seemed a little surprised by that, and said that's something we'll have to figure out. So,
Well, it's interesting too, especially with Parkerville, because in that stretch, how many speed humps have you got?
Yeah.
And I think most people who value their undercarriage are probably gonna slow and maybe potentially speed back up, but does that affect
Yeah.
the ability to enforce?
I still believe the first step is to actually write the letter, request it, and then we'll work on the details.
One detail that we work on is 25, and then they've got, someone's got a speed for 660 feet.
Yeah.
To technically get a ticket.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what details we work on.
Well, the enforcement, and how
I,
the department can enforce that.
I would like to hear, can we bring over Acting Chief Newell? I know it's under report. I don't know, typically we don't have discussions, but I'm just curious, Mark, I know you said you briefly talked to him. I just wanted to see if you have any additional thought. I mean, I don't want to do anything to hamstring our officers as well and to make things tougher. If-
Well, I mean, is it a judgment call?
Is it worth lowering it and then having all the tickets appeal and having an officer go to court and, a judge, how do you justify 660 feet? Did you get your tape measure out? I mean, I don't know. I don't want to make anything tougher for them to be able to enforce those that are legitimately
Right,
speeding now.
right.
So anyway, just curious what his thoughts are.
Chief, thank you for hanging around. Do you have a thought on this? I think you've heard the conversation the board has been having. You're muted. Chief, you're muted. There you go.
Sorry about that. I am for lowering it. There is plenty of instances where officers can pull over vehicles for what they believe to be excessive speed. You know, same reason if you're driving your cruiser and someone goes by flying by you and appear to be excess of the speed limit, you can make a traffic stop from that. I believe that it will at least give some teeth to our officers for making car stops for 10 miles over. And I think it will make the residents on the street very happy to have our enforcement there. So I am for lowering it. I think that we can still work with it. And, you know, our officers go to court all the time, and sometimes the operator doesn't show up, and sometimes, you know, they do. And then I think our officers, we have a lot of court cases and we do a great job in the courts. I think it'd be fine. So that's my opinion.
Well, thank you. That completely changed my mind and my thought process on it. I didn't want to do anything to make it harder for you, but it doesn't sound like it will. So,
We know it's a problem.
yeah,
We've been told, so then this is a shot at.
there we go.
Do we need a motion to write the letter or just?
I thought we already basically did that, right?
Well, Mark wrote the
If you
letter.
want to, if you simply want to direct me to
Yeah,
formally make the request.
I don't
I'm
think we
happy to
can
do
make a
that.
motion under report, but I think we can get a
Consensus.
consensus here to,
Right.
yeah.
Write the letter.
Yep.
I don't know, can we ask Chelsea?
Chelsea?
What her thoughts on it?
Yep, go ahead. I'm good.
Okay, here we go. All right,
Okay, consent agenda.
thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Acting Chief.
Thank you.
Bye, have a good night.
Night.
Okay, consent agenda, anything anyone want to hold from A to L?
Oh, E has been tabled, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, E's off. Okay, so, anything big?
I'd one change to A.
What did you say, Chelsea?
A.
And did,
One change to A.
Okay, so we're gonna hold A,
and then did,
and I'm gonna hold H.
okay.
Okay. All right, so far A and H, anything else? Anybody want to hold? Okay, we're doing better here. We're doing better. Okay, all right, so, can someone make a motion to approve the consent agenda except for items A and H?
So move,
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, Chelsea?
except for A and
Aye.
H and E
No
too.
E.
Okay, so let's correct the motion. So motion is to approve consent agenda, except for A, E, and H.
So move.
Second.
Chelsea, roll call vote.
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Cook is aye. So 5-0 and everything but the 2 that we've held and the 1 that we have postponed. Okay, so Chelsea, what do you have for A as far as the open session minutes from the 28th?
So just on row 36, I just want to change, the board is increasing this not budget item, but spending limit to 500,000. That's it.
I agree with that. That's it?
I've got another thing I noticed.
Okay, go ahead.
On line 12, where it says the board will be entered into an executive session, it should just say the board entered into executive session.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't resist patting ourselves on the back. This minutes was less than 150 lines versus the prior one, which was over 400 lines. So I very much enjoyed
You
reading
can't pat
this.
yourself on the back till there's a
Ourselves.
consistent, until there's some kind of a
That's right.
track record. So if this is the start.
This is a ray of hope. So I'm hopeless optimist. But great
Okay.
job to all involved.
All right, so motion is to approve the open session minute meetings from June 28, 2022 as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Chelsea? Lisa?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Cook is aye. Okay, that is over there. Okay, the next one is, that's been held, is the revised town council contract, which everybody got. There's been one change made to it since you saw it. You want to describe the change, Mark?
Sure. I believe that Mr. Dennington is to be acknowledged for the change. In the exhibit A to the flat fee proposal, number 4, the original proposed, because again, this fee originally simply was for town council, did not include labor. So number 4 had stated the flat fee does not encompass matters relating to labor and employment, given the variability such matters built the firm's hourly rate. That has now been removed. So Exhibit A was, as in your packet, was 13 items. It is now 12 items in the format that would be signed. Nothing else has been changed. Simply that section has been removed because it contradicts the services that are being provided for labor in the revised contract.
Good catch, Andrew.
And Mr. Kellerman agrees.
He does agree.
Mark talked to him, so I think we're in good shape.
They'll be expecting an invoice.
I think this is such a good contract. You know, this is, $108,000 a year, 7 for town council, 2 for labor. In our budget for fiscal year 23, we've got 90 for town council and 50 for special legal counsel. So I just to have this fixed fee with all the things that are included in here. This is going to
The
town
service
meetings.
that we're getting.
Yes, and with the excellent service we're getting from this whole firm. But it includes the office hours here, includes meetings, includes almost everything you can think of. It really is a fixed fee.
And again, services across a broad range of services.
Yeah.
You've got, through the firm, we've got expertise in a variety of areas that I think hugely helpful. So,
And you've seen a number of the attorneys in the firm. You've been exposed to them through various cases and issues and everything.
yeah, they've been very busy,
Oh, impressive.
sadly.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, Chelsea?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
So the motion is to approve the amended legal contract with J. Tellerman's firm as described by Mr. Purple with the paragraph 4 eliminated to correct the paragraph as far as labor counsel.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Chelsea,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Cook is aye, 5-0. On that one. Okay, so that's the consent agenda, and we did pretty well with that one. Okay, on to other matters. Does anybody want to be on the MWRTA?
I have conceptual interest, but not a lot of time, so.
We're all
I make a
stretched
motion that we appoint Mr. Stivers to the MWRTA.
I'm going to respectfully decline.
pretty big. No one's raising their hand here, Chelsea.
You expressed an interest. Isn't that enough?
Conceptual. Chelsea's not here, so
Yeah.
maybe,
No.
maybe planning board.
Chelsea's here.
Planning board is a natural place for someone who might be interested in this, actually. I don't know.
So maybe what we do is, since we think we're all pretty stretched right now with everything we're doing besides sitting on this board, we all got other duties, right? Maybe we think our job is to find someone else outside the select board and start with planning board.
I'm conceptually interested because I think one of the real opportunities here is to find better ways to have transportation from the T station
Yeah.
up into the business areas and maybe up into Marlboro. And, that has been sort of sporadic. But I think that would be a very interesting reinforcement of some of the things the EDC is trying to do in
Yep.
terms of route 9 economic health and a better transportation effort. So I
So we think it's important.
there's state money there, but again, you need somebody to be pushing on that fairly actively.
John Woods has been pretty good about doing that. So maybe, does it have to be?
No.
We can
So
have a
each chief elected
Yeah.
executive official of a city or town that is a member of the authority is that municipality's representative. Chief elected executive may in writing appoint a designee to act for them. Okay, so you can appoint somebody to represent your interests on the board.
I'd like to see if there's interest on EDC, because I think that very point is, John has been talking about that.
Yeah.
The whole time I've been on this board, he's trying to expand
Although
service.
John has, I think, taken a new job recently and
He did.
he's talked about less time available.
I'm not sure he would do it because he's,
Right,
he's
somebody
sharp.
else.
Maybe our new
Yeah,
EDC.
he's got a lot going on, but
There you
there's a new member,
Yeah.
we've got 7 other members, so
Yeah.
I'm happy to call EDC and say, do you have someone?
I think that
And
makes
then we'll go
sense.
to plan B.
Good.
Start there.
Yeah, start there. Everybody agree?
Yep.
Okay, all right, we've done the next one, discussion of proposed articles that we know about for October 13th. I thought we just start a list, so we kind of know where we're heading to see the ones we like. Okay, I think we've got the list, right, Mark, with what everybody said, so I'll read what I think it is. You want to read what it is?
No, we
I
just
didn't
like,
submit any.
yeah, I mean, there was, I don't wanna out the people that submitted and
I
the
didn't.
people that didn't, except
Okay.
Lisa.
I'm not trying to
Latrice,
out, I'm not
yeah.
trying to out, so.
But I think that there was some overlap, in the items, obviously, based on the negotiations from the special town meeting. Trees and scenic roads are items 1 and 2.
Mhm.
And then, looking at, there was a, discussion of any capital items that may be on there. An item, clickers.
Yeah,
That Mr. Hegarty had talked about to try to speed up, process for town meeting. Again, the tree funding, operational versus catch up, how we want to do that, which we talked about tonight. A mechanism to use free cash for the FY 23 budget. That may be more of a select board issue than town meeting, but I guess that's something for discussion. I don't know who put this in here, parcel 5440 acquisition,
Beats me.
maybe that was Mr. Dennington.
Yeah, I think so.
There was a discussion, and I think there's been some conversation, SHOPSI, CPC, Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the funds, how they flow, the clarification. I respectfully think that conversation is best had, offline to try to get that all set, because I'm not sure the town meeting wants to
I think that'd be a terrible discussion.
sit there with that
very good
discussion.
advice.
I think the
Well, not only
discussion,
that'd be hard to explain, I mean, I talked to Ms. Gillespie this week for literally an hour and a half, but I get it now, but it took an hour and a half for me to truly understand the whole background. So I hope we can get that resolved.
but I think it can be resolved offline, but I think it may result in a warrant article to change some of the CPC bylaw language, because Mr. Talman has pointed out that there is an unusual feature in that makes this more difficult that many towns don't have, so.
But I think the
Okay.
view of it needs to be perspective
Exactly,
rather than
yeah,
retroactive.
exactly, yeah.
Um, there's a discussion of increasing the CPA percentage. And warrant article submission timeline bylaw, which I believe that we talked about, but didn't feel that was
Previously, yeah.
something we should rush into, but I think that, that makes sense. Also, likely something coming back from the town clerk, regarding consistency on the boards and committees for certain things, whether it's the makeup or but he wanted to bring something forward before. I think he may bring something back.
So how many is that roughly?
10 roughly.
Maybe, yeah, roughly 10.
And the fall town meeting last year was about the same thing, 12 maybe?
Yeah, but I think the trees and the scenic road are gonna generate some discussion again. So I think if you're looking for a
I
driver,
hope so.
Right.
I think that's.
I hope there's a driver here, because some of these things are not gonna drive people to town. meeting.
I think the trees, I think scenic roads, town meeting indefinitely postpone that. Last town meeting, I think
Yeah.
that's gonna create some discussion.
But the problem is that those are first.
Well, you know what, maybe a
They are.
placeholder mark,
Yeah.
because as we put together the committee for the community center, they may potentially as well be looking for some funds, as Mr. Malinowski mentioned, so.
There might be some more budget stuff
Yeah.
before we get there that we need to address.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're about to hear what our true 1/122 valuations are, so to see how close we.
The other thing too, and I'm sorry, I didn't have this on the list, but I know I did, I mentioned it to someone earlier, was, we talk about fall town meeting and everyone wants to do fall town meetings. We really only had one codified meeting a year, for Southborough. If we want to do a fall town meeting on a regular basis, we should codify that, and we should try to define what that meeting is and what the board intends to, what town meeting will take up at that,
Yeah.
to try to, okay, so I know that if I want to do zoning, for example, or I want to do this particular issue, these things are held in the fall.
Yeah.
These type of things are, so I know where if I'm not coming to town meeting as a regular, this is where, I should make my plans to attend.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I do too.
As long as if you didn't need one, you could
Don't,
not
right,
have it,
that's
you
right.
know, not have it just to have a
Right.
meeting.
Not required. but,
Right.
Mark, did you have anything on there for CPC? We may want to reach out to them. I don't know if CPC may have an article that they may want to. put
Other
out
than the
for the fall.
percentage.
Other than the percentage,
Besides
yeah.
that,
I would just double check with them.
And planning board as well. I haven't heard them talking about other things, but
I mean, this is just a list to get us
Yeah.
going. Obviously, there will be other things. I will say, the town of Burlington has it codified that they have a town meeting every 120 days.
Oh, no.
wow.
3
They're
years.
required to.
No, thank you.
So-
Question for Chelsea, anything from the Board of Health, Chelsea, on the fall town meeting? You folks are looking at some regulations, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be bylaw driven, though. It's more gonna be like rules and regs and process oriented.
And policies and so forth, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at doing a community health assessment at the regional level. I just don't know the timing of that. And I don't have enough details to say whether we would need anything related to that yet or not.
Thanks.
All right, anything else as far as our list? Nope. I'm missing a little vote, just trying to start the list. Okay, next one is
Can
the,
I ask a follow-up question?
go ahead.
When does the warrant close for the fall?
We wanted to close.
When does it open?
We opened it, I think.
You opened it.
Yeah.
You did open it.
Okay.
When would it need to be printed? 3 weeks?
So I would refer you to a previous meeting where I gave those answers, but don't have them at my fingertips right now.
Am I
But
3
if
weeks?
it's, if it's an October 13th meeting, your meeting, September,
6.
well, yeah, so 7 and 20. I would say, I mean, I think you should have everything, you should look to, everything should definitely be closed on the 7th
Of September.
of September.
Yeah,
Closed, and then, and then the meeting of the 20th, you can sign
Yeah.
the final warrant, and we'll get it posted.
That sounds right. So
Yeah, I mean, it's, like I said, it's a tight schedule, but we're not having to print budgets, we're not having to, it shouldn't be it's not as arduous.
You
as
said
an annual.
September 2nd.
But I thought Jay Talman said to us, what we learned last year is that until we actually sign it, it's open. That's not what he said to us?
Until you post the warrant,
Okay,
okay? So if you close the warrant on
the 7th.
the 7th, you sign on the 20th. Once you sign it on the 20th, it's gonna be posted, and at that point, there's nothing you can do.
I thought there was a wrinkle there, that was because we don't have a bylaw that states otherwise.
Because you don't have,
So
correct.
we could have a bylaw that has a different
You
sequence.
could have a bylaw that says that, all articles must be submitted
Which is,
X number of days ahead of,
yeah, which is what I proposed last year, and I hope we reconsider it.
Correct.
Time here to give more flexibility administratively there, not to cut off people. but,
can we put it on the list?
That's on.
Yeah.
it is on the list.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I missed it. All right.
yeah. Warrant article submission timeline bylaw.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so to be clear though, what we're really saying is, we're gonna have our work done on the 7th, but until we post it,
Yeah.
someone else can come in between the 7th and 20th
Right.
and add a citizen petition for something if they want to.
Yeah.
Which is what happened last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I
So
see,
we'll have we agree, we're gonna be done on the 7th as far as what we want in the warrant.
I see Mr. Semino in the audience. I wonder if he has anything to say about his timings. It's town meetings, his show.
Well, he's not raising his
Not
hand, so
very-
he's,
Okay.
he may not be available. So
So
we
he's
have,
apparently happy, so that's good.
all right, so we'll watch this hand before. Okay, everybody set with that one? Yep. Okay, next one is the recommendation for the police chief search assessment center. So since we put this on there, we realized this is not quite ready for prime time, so we're going to postpone this one tonight. And we will have to call a quick meeting for this once we get the last detail worked out with this. So very soon, we'll have a special quick meeting to basically vote on this one. Okay. Okay, communication with Public Works Planning Board. So we're back in the public meeting here. did everybody watch the planning board meeting, not the one Monday, but the one before that where Bill Boland was there? So if you did, you recall that one of the things he said more than once is that the reason that his committee has been as inactive as it has been is because the select board hasn't asked for anything. We haven't asked for advice. So my question is, do we want to write PWPB a letter asking for advice on certain topics? So in order to try to tee this up tonight, Sam has put together a list of topics. We might put in a letter to the PWPB, and we all know what they are, right? These are no surprises as far as things that we really would like them to take up, come to us, advise us as far as what their opinion is on the subject, or do we not?
Which I believe is a useful idea, so.
Do we have a list that the board could have been, again, it's tough, I guess, to have this conversation without, if there was a list, it would have been good to have the public and.
We can put this together, right now, with the five of us, if we want to do this.
Or do it later, but I'd be happy to go through what I think might be on that list. Is at least a way to start the conversation.
So what we know of, what we know at this point is Deb DeMuro has taken Sue Val's place, right? So you've got, that's done. They are going to have, PWPB is going to have a joint meeting with Capitol on the 18th, but it's just a joint meeting. They don't, right now, there is no plan that I'm aware of for PWPB to have a separate meeting where they would start maybe getting into these things. So, we can't make them do that piece of it, but I thought if we sent a letter or an email to Mr. Boland as chair, basically requesting that they get involved in certain areas, then that might help get this process moved along further. And to some more background, I actually ran into Mr. Boland recently at Starbucks, and we had a long talk. There's clearly a philosophical difference between he and at least two members on there, which are Sam and Deb and Maria. Mr. Boland clearly does not think that PWPB should be taking an active role in oversight or help, not oversight, but help the DPW with some of the projects, give them advice. He doesn't think that's their role. He clearly believes that their role was pretty much done when the DPW was first put together with the special act. That's what he really thinks that committee was formed to do, is to help put that together, stand it up, get going. So he really does not think there's a lot to do. He believes that the DPW, he believes that we today tend to be a little bit of a micromanager. Okay, which that's a fair comment. Maybe you may not agree, but that's what he thinks. And that the DPW does not need the help that I think some of us thinks that it does need. So there's a real big philosophical difference, and with members on the board, so they're going to have to try to work this out. I don't know how it's going to get resolved. Mr. Murray clearly wants to get things going in a different direction. So I don't know where this all will end up. It's not necessarily healthy as far as that big of a difference in opinion or philosophy as far as how committee should be run. So if we sent the list, we at least would be doing what he said we hadn't been doing, which is why they just, so they have things that they should be meeting to talk about. So it might at least get that meeting set up that we think needs to be had, so they really can discuss their issues.
Okay, so I agree that we should provide such a list. And I think that I see a value in having the list touch on the projects that are at the most brand new stage. Okay, there's some of these projects that are so deep in the process that, for example, like the Newton Street project.
Right.
I mean, why would we do that?
I agree with that.
Okay, some there where we've just, and this touches back on our meeting, the goal setting meeting, where we've got some projects that are not as far down the pike. So one, for example, would be the Hopkinton connection. We've just had one meeting about it. It's a huge topic.
Yeah.
I'm interested in it more. I was a little bit surprised that wasn't ranked higher on the goal setting list. And I don't know whether that's because of the different criteria used for people use for ranking. But that's one where for that board, this is a topic that's just beginning. So they have an opportunity to begin to kind of anticipate some of the questions or concerns that, you know, the public is going to ask about the project later down the road. I see that as really only benefiting us. That's one that comes to mind. Another is the VHB traffic study, which again, we appropriated the money for it at the fall town meeting. A very preliminary set of data was produced, but the final report is not yet done. You know, I feel some people are understandably frustrated that people came and asked us to consider truck exclusions, and we said, wait, we gotta slow down. We did this entire town-wide study, and it's now taking its time. Once that study is done, that's going to spark a discussion about, you know, what roads you should, you know, how you would implement truck exclusions across town. So that's one where it's still kind of, in some ways, in its infancy. That's an interesting combination of two, because one is very heavily, you know, fiscal, right? The Hopkinton MWRA connection. The other is truck exclusion, not really a money issue. It's more of a, well, what's best for the town, citizen input, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just kind of speaking extemporaneously here because, but anyway, that's one thing to consider is, for example, like the St. Mark's Street, we've had probably 5-6 meetings about that. That's really deep into the process. That's one where I don't see that as probably, it's already been discussed so heavily. I think their discussion will just repeat the points that we've already heard. So there's two that you can start
What
with.
about Deerfoot flag?
I think that is maybe going to be so tied into other factors.
Potentially upcoming factors
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Could be useful to the different perspective on that.
We just have a contract that we signed, you know, to do that. So we gotta do something with that contract at some point.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the board has asked, and through Ms. Galligan, I've asked her to ask the vendor, you know, to provide the cost for a change order if we're looking
Just to
to
take it out.
remove it from the contract. That was
Mhm.
the last thought, I believe, that the board had.
But
put
just
forward
on that, the planning board took a vote to not permit the removal of that tree. That completely changes the whole project and calls into question whether to do it. And the really quickly prepared alternative proposal we saw the night before, one of the tree was still in the sidewalk, in the middle of the crosswalk or something like that. So again, is that really something where, is that a discussion that's just going to repeat points that people have already,
But
I haven't made up my mind.
New
Potentially,
project.
I think, Andrew, though, with a potential project that was part of the genesis of doing this study might be, you know, something maybe going in off of Flag Road, that this may, some of the concerns that generated this may come back
Yeah.
to some level. And,
Okay.
That's exactly what I mentioned, because it is kind of tied into the traffic study. So there is a connection.
And another one that, this is more longer term. Okay, it's amazing using this as an opportunity to try to advocate for some of my goal setting ones from last meeting. Is the ARPA committee made a recommendation? There's still a bucket there, right, for sidewalks.
that was on my list, yeah.
Okay, so that's again, that's an opportunity where every time town does kind of townwide surveys, a lot of people say, what, you know, what, we would love to see more sidewalks in town.
Yeah.
And
How old, Sam, is the study that was done now? That, does
2017 or 15,
Wait, is that recent?
2015, the sidewalk, then they updated it as part of the Cordova Road project. I think BHB took another look at that and developed a pretty interesting map that shows where the sidewalks are in town now and re-ranked sidewalks as part of that process. So there's some data there, but there's still some real open issues as
Yeah.
far as, you know, where if we have X dollars, you know, where's the best place to spend it? I see that's a fertile
I agree.
topic for pursuit here.
Mhm.
And just last thought here is probably makes sense to start with, given what you mentioned is the board should try to get off on a good start of some things where they might be easier to come to a consensus on rather than more
I don't know
difficult.
if any of these are easy.
Okay, you're right. But,
But they're good. They're meaty topics that are important and need careful consideration.
yeah,
And people care
so then
about.
also, Sam, are you the appointee? Because you're now both the advisor and the client here of the, because you're on.
I'm a member of the Public Works Planning Board,
Yeah.
appointed by the planning board.
Okay, appointed by the planning board was, all right.
Yeah, so.
So let me add a couple more that we could, that would be fit your criteria, something new and not looking back and.
Okay.
The pavement management system that is being considered for the first time. There is, so now there's going to be a new road contract, a normal road contract that's being considered, as far as, starting to take care of roads besides Main Street, right? So that's there. Portable Road project is coming up as far as that one. No, that's a big one. as far
That's
as
pretty far in
considering
though, I think.
Excuse me?
That's pretty far
Yeah.
along now in terms of
It is.
the engineering process. So I'm not quite sure how much new
Well,
is there, but it's interesting to at least keep an eye on.
Can we go back to the pavement management system? And this was one of my questions and one of my concerns is, are we gonna find there's overlap between what capital is doing and Public Works Planning Board?
That was exactly my next point. So
Okay.
we, you know, I don't know that we want to send, 10 things to PWPB. They haven't met in a long time, so maybe we just give them a couple. Hopkinton to me is the obvious one, right? That's obvious. And maybe we don't because, how, I don't ever see PWPP doing the detailed work that capital does. They just aren't going to, right? I'm sorry, Sam, but
I
it's just,
agree.
with the people that are on capital.
Yeah.
And so you don't want the people doing the same thing. You don't want overlap, right? And so,
That's why I brought up pavement management.
There's
Because
plenty to
Capital's
do.
talked
Yeah, they are.
about
They
that
are.
and they're looking into that. So that would be one I would leave with Capital versus I think that the Public Works Planning Board.
Yeah.
Hopkinton, I agree. I think that's a great starting point. But I think that the traffic study to process some of that initial information. Deerfoot and Flag, I think, again, that whole issue a year from now is gonna come full circle again. Some of the same concerns are gonna be back. So whether that gets back
Yeah.
burnered for now, but it's something that you could certainly put on the radar.
And again, that's less capital in terms of
Correct.
structure. kind of
Correct.
thing. So I think that's a good.
You know, again, updating the sidewalk study, I think that's key. So
Yeah.
we know going forward. and get there.
so you think that should be PWPB or that should be capital?
This is just a study with the recommendations. It's not about the cost. It's about the putting a priority list together of where sidewalks are most needed. And I think that could then play into capital and the board's discussion.
But
on-
there's certainly cost involved in the sense that, you don't want to
Correct,
spend all your money on a hugely
Correct.
expensive sidewalk. How do you
correct.
spread the value of that around town appropriately, et cetera? But very, very rich topic for discussion.
Very rich.
So everything we listed here, except maybe updating the sidewalk study is, well, and the traffic study are capital in nature, right? What about, there's been some discussion lately on the blog about whether we're doing what we should do as far as recycling goes. Now, if you read Kelly Roney, it was the open thread thing. So Kelly Roney asked the question and John Butler gave a pretty good reply, right? As far as, where things stand. And, it may be totally out of our control, which is what John was trying to point out, that, a lot of it is, we have nothing to do with. We can't help it that China doesn't want our dirty plastics anymore. So, maybe just making sure that we're doing the best we can with that. We've gotten a couple of specific requests for things like the putting bicycles up there, so maybe we asked them to take a look at the whole operation up there, including the swap shop. There's been some people that have said, we really wish we could get those volunteers back up there to help sort that stuff.
So I can give you just a quick update on that. So only 7 people have signed the waiver to come back. That was as of a week and a half ago. Linda Davids, again, telling people, if you want to do this, people have committed they want to, you really have to go and sign the waiver. So it's ready to happen. It's just getting the volunteers. in place
So that's
to do
not, okay, so that's pretty much.
it. That's all signed.
But again, I think studying that is useful because, again, the economics of that is, you point out, Kathy, change that happened about 5 years ago, so now with the China thing, but there are firms that actually work with towns to try to figure out how to get more value out of the recycle stream, and I'm not convinced that we've actually pushed that as hard as we might. People have suggested that we reform the recycling committee that used to be active years ago, but I think Public Works Planning Board could take a look at that and try to understand what the right option is.
Do you have a sense, maybe it's way too early, because really the meeting on the 18th, I think you said, will maybe answer some of these questions about how frequently do you think that the board, Public Works Planning Board, would be meeting when it.
Well, I mean, that depends on the board. They've not met in 18 months now, so I think the opportunity is, there's a lot of upside.
I don't think, Andrew, that's for us to tell them. We don't appoint them. Planning board and the moderator do. So I don't know that we could tell them, we expect you to meet every month.
I understand.
We can
I
give them.
understand that.
But we can ask them for advice on this. And I'd like to back up 1 second and just reinforce that I respect Mr. Boland's experience and opinions and so forth, but in fact, the special act in 1981 or whatever it was that formed the DPW, 94, whatever. 91. It says there is hereby established in the town of Southborough a Public Works Planning Board to advise the Board of Selectmen in matters of planning, managing, and financing of said town. Period. That's it. And so in fact, that's a hugely broad charter. It doesn't say anything about DPW, it doesn't say anything about once you're set up, you go away kind of thing. So to me, it is a potentially valuable resource with good committee members there to weigh in on issues that have big policy as well as financial impact on the town related to public works primarily here. And it's great that we've got a strong capital planning committee, so I think there's plenty of work to go around. And I think that it's very possible to expect that the capital and public works planning board work together to sort out who's going to do what, because I think there's more than enough work here to do. And the only,
Almost everything that's counted here is on your agenda for the 18th. So they are going to discuss these jointly. So maybe they'll figure out, how they're going to divvy it up. I don't know. But
does Chelsea want to add anything? I know it's tough when you're not in the room.
it is tough.
We sometimes.
Yeah, I
forget.
mean, I think I'd like to see how the meeting goes on the 18th. I think probably truck exclusion and Deerfoot flag would be the list that I would come up with tonight. I obviously didn't have this ahead of time unless I missed the list that went out. But that's kind of my gut reaction.
We could do that. We could wait and see what happens on the 18th and see, what the committee does to.
But like the traffic study one seems to be like one that would be pretty straightforward.
So why don't we do that?
Building
one
on
then?
smaller things.
Do that in Deerfoot, those are related, right? Or at least do the traffic study, because we were supposed to have the results of that the week of June 6th, and this is a month later. So something's gotten delayed here.
What about Hopkinton,
Hopkinton, yeah.
Chelsea? What do you think about Hopkinton?
I'm sorry, I thought they were talking about that on Monday.
They are talking about it on Monday.
That's why I didn't include it.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Kathy, can I add one more on the list? There's been a lot of conversation around vegetation management. There are plans for that. The utilities do some of that stuff. I think we've got a significant invasives problem around town that needs a more comprehensive approach. And again, that seems to be something that's a reasonable task for the Public Works Planning Board.
Right, and not a capital one.
Not a
That's one
capital.
that I don't think is capital. And, Karen has said that she hasn't done it this year because of all the issues with it as far as what's happened in the past. So that,
Yeah.
I think that's a really good one.
So again, to me, that's a fairly straightforward on the list, not an easy problem, but it'd be great to have somebody take a careful look at that. So,
I think one of the things too with invasives, and somebody can keep me honest, I'm not sure who to look at, but there was a CPC article
For open space, and it was
for open
just
space addressing
for-
invasives. Was it just
Golf
over?
course.
Yeah,
Okay.
part of the golf.
I
course.
remember there was at one point, the board had kind of asked for an update on where we were with the article. I don't know.
Yeah, that was
We're in-
limited.
we're in
That was a
year
while,
two.
yeah.
In year 2 of 3
Yeah.
years on that one, because you got to go in and you cut it back, and then you go in, this is a slight overstatement, but then you squirt
Yeah.
whatever pesticide, defoliant or whatever in the individual stems of the knotweed or something. And then you got to watch it for another year and do something else. So it's a long-term thing, but it's going well, as I understand it, but it's not something that's quick.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can tell you from walking today and looking at all these trees, it's a huge, invasives are a huge problem. I just think it's certainly something to be looked at, but I think the expense on trying to extricate it are going to be,
Well, it's huge
crazy.
if the town does it, but I think many towns are actually doing that with a strong education component. And I
Okay,
think there are a lot of private property owners who would be supportive
Yeah.
of managing their own property and cutting back if the town made it a priority. So again, I don't know the solution, but I think that's something that's a worthy topic because it is, bigger problem.
So I agree, it's an education issue. Once you get cutting though, conservation wants to make sure
Yeah.
you know where to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
an open space.
But anyway, to me, that's a useful one to put on the list of requests that PWG.
So maybe do the traffic study and do that. Those two things are not capital, pretty clearly, and so start with
Let's
those.
start
two.
with those.
And
Yeah,
to set, I think you set your expectations as to when you'd like to hear from them, whether it's a final or an interim report, just to get an understanding of where they are and what they may need, or,
So,
is it worth sending a letter now or waiting until the next meeting after capital, when if we send a letter now for 2 things, and after that meeting, we may add 4 more things?
but we could send a letter saying here are initial 2, and we will follow up as we get additional input based on the conversations that are going to happen over the next month or so here. Something like that.
I mean, I don't have a strong preference either way. I'm just saying we're doing twice the work. Not that sending a letter is a lot of work, but,
I'm in favor of getting it started, I guess, making the point that this is the expectation.
Adrian, now or later?
The question is whether to write a letter now or later, and one of the things that depends on is what things we would put on this list. And
after capital.
And so we could just write the letter and put 2 things on it for now. Just say these are 2 things we're interested in you
okay,
starting to work on.
traffic study and
Vegetation management plan, VMP,
I don't have a strong preference, so if,
as far as the timing.
as
I do.
as far as, I'm sorry, Chelsea, go ahead.
I do, sorry.
Okay.
I would actually like to see the letter before we send it, just because we didn't have anything in writing tonight. I'd like to see it
Do
actually
you want
listed
to
out.
send it now, or do you want to send it after the meeting on Monday, so we can kind of see how that goes?
After.
so we're going to need
okay.
a quick special meeting to talk about the assessment center.
Yep, so we can
Yes.
add this on.
So this is something that hopefully we could have,
A draft letter.
have a draft and do it at the same
That's
time.
fine.
Okay.
What time is the meeting on the 18th? Is it an evening meeting or?
It
Yes.
is. It's in person, but it's gonna be a hybrid.
18th,
Yes.
just want to make sure.
At the public safety building?
Yes.
So it's hybrid, what does that mean?
Oh,
It means like we're doing, we're here in
The board is- the
person,
board is
but
there
we're
in
able
public.
to take comment and participants remotely.
Okay. Now, again, there's
Okay.
some chance that the legislature will act shortly on that. Or not. Don't know. But what they propose now continues what we have now till April of 2023, right?
Correct. So my understanding, and I've put it out there a couple of times and I've not been told differently, is that the current authorization expires on July 15th.
mhm.
If on July 14th, you post post a meeting for the Public Works Planning Board to hold a virtual meeting on July 22nd. And, you know, they don't continue something until, say, there's a gap, and the 22nd is part of that gap. Because you posted the meeting under the current regulations, which allowed it, you therefore are allowed to hold that meeting.
It works.
Because remember, we had that 2-3 day gap last time, and we tried to scramble, and then after the fact, we're kind of told we didn't have to scramble.
Yeah.
So,
But it's my understanding that both House and Senate versions are in agreement on continuing the current model.
Yes.
they
Yeah.
both absolutely agree, but
It's
the
what
House snuck
happens.
in that poison pill language,
Yeah,
which
what
would result in an unfunded mandate, I
What
think.
happens
For next
April
April 1st.
23.
Right,
Yeah,
And
correct.
the MMA is all over it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
it. People have written Mark wrote letters, so a lot has gone in as far as
Yeah.
protesting that. So I think there's general agreement that
short term.
the towns don't want
Looks like you're gonna.
the required hybrid.
Can I give an update? We just kind of talked about this, Kathy, when we talked about town meeting and CPC. So Andrew Mills just sent me an email that those 3 years that Shopsy was concerned about the Affordable Housing Trust wrote a letter, CPC voted tonight that to move those monies into the Affordable Housing Trust. Hopefully that will,
Check, check.
but they want to put some regulations and the required, you know, what's required under the CPA to go with the notice to us and the rest of the. So that, I just got
That's
that.
progress.
So that's definite progress,
Good.
and that may alleviate an item potentially for town meeting as well. So thank you to CPC.
Okay, so I think we're moving on. So last one is basically our meeting last Thursday. So everybody got what Mark sent out today as far as what we're going to get from our consultant. Right?
The memo.
Yep.
Retreat goals and
There
follow-up.
were four documents attached. So
Okay.
we've got the actual spreadsheet with the final goal. We've got this goal action plan, right?
Yep.
We've got the memo that he wrote, right? And then we've also got the list of, which is part of the memo, the list of his suggestions as far as how to make our process, our work more efficient, which revolves around our meetings.
And that mostly, it looked to me like mostly the same things that were on the final couple of PowerPoint slides, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I think this is reading this. So I thought we'd start there because that's kind of easy. And, you know, if you read them, I think we're doing most of them anyway. So I thought we'd start there because I think we can knock those out pretty quick. So I'm just going to go through these and see what everybody thinks as far as, is this something that we were already doing? Is this something we want to add to our selectmen's policy? Is it something you disagree with? Okay. Chelsea, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, the first one is plan a realistic agenda. The advantage to having the chair, vice chair, and town administrator, this is a town administrator, attend agenda planning meetings is that they can have discussion on how long they expect to take for each item. Okay, so those four are already getting together to plan agendas. We're doing that, right?
Correct.
Which I guess he knew, that's why he put it there, right? So what he's really saying is we can go further and also put together, try to, you know, time each section, so we really do end up with a meeting length that is something that we're going to shoot for, which is one of the other bullets here. Okay, I see nothing wrong with that. Anybody disagree with that?
I think we could also expand that, Kathy, to let the people who are coming in know how much time we've allocated for them.
So hold that thought, because I agree that. we
It's
should
funny,
be-
it's funny because the things that we're, the things that we're talking about, if we had ordered this differently, planning realistic agenda probably would have been the first thing. It would, some of these other things will help to
Get to there.
identify it, yes.
Yep, okay. So agree, Chelsea. So I think we're gonna get that in a different one. So just hold that thought.
Yeah,
on that.
okay.
Okay, not everything belongs on a select board agenda. Some items may be able to be and should be handled administratively. So who would disagree with that? If we can get it handled outside, we do it, right?
There are,
And we just need your
yeah,
help to.
I think there are things that the board has agreed to defer to me, and let me handle, whether it's parade permits. We talked about.
Cemetery.
We talked about cemetery, deeds and things like that. So, if there are more things that we feel that administratively we can do outside, That's fine.
So we just continue to ask ourselves, is
Yep.
it something we really need to do, or is it
Yep.
something you can do, right?
Sure.
Okay, so we agree with that. The town administrator should create background information on agenda items and then share this packet with the board and public at least 48 hours in advance. This should be done as much detail as the board feels they need. It could be a 2-page summary. We're already doing this, and we've got a very nice packet.
We do.
So I'd say check.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, select board, read the background material. think
Can
we
I just
all
go back
do
on
really
that?
good. What?
Sorry, because on that, I interpret that a little bit differently.
What? Sorry, Andrew.
Pardon me?
Go ahead.
Okay, I thought the suggestion there was kind of like, okay, the town meeting warrant, right? There's the whole thing, and then there's a 2 or 3 sentence summary of each thing. I mean, that might be useful, but then I would really defer to Mark and Vanessa as to whether, first, also the townhouse closes at 12:30 on Friday, and you want to get the packet out. So, while that seems laudable, I'm fine with the way we are right now.
I
And
am too. I think
Just wanted to,
So I
Explain that
will
thought
tell
process.
you, I will just say, in my career, I've had boards, and this isn't one of them, that tended not to look at the material until they get to the meeting.
Yep.
And so what I had
That's
done is I basically prepared what you just described, what Peter is describing here, a little bit of a Cliff Note version of the meeting. If you do nothing else, please read this before you come to the meeting so that you can be, articulate on the items that are on the agenda. As Sam had said, 3-4 sentences about what we're talking about here, for each particular item, what we're actually doing here. This board likes to get into the details. You do your homework, you read your stuff. I just think it would be a waste unless the board thinks it would be helpful.
So are you talking specifically of just giving the board a summary and not doing the full packet?
No, full packet, but
The
in
Cliff
essence,
Notes on
it
top
just
of it.
gives you a 2-page summary, taking the agenda and going through, item A, when acting chief is coming in to talk about the student officer and giving you the background. We had this many candidates, this was the process we did, and this is how we got here. We're anticipating his start date is X.
So short of giving you more to do, I mean, I think if any of us have a question on anything in the packet,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
pretty consistently.
And that's one of the bullet points.
Yeah, so I just don't.
I'm just pointing out that I've done this in the past, but I've done it for a reason that I don't think applies to this
I
board.
agree.
But would that be useful for the public?
It's normally not for the public.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't think, I don't think so. I love this. I love the way it's put together.
Yeah,
We
I
are
agree.
detailed people. We need this. So I say,
Leave it as is.
Yep.
As is,
Yep.
works for me.
I agree.
Andrew.
sorry, I got off onto that
That's okay.
tangent,
That's okay.
but I just,
No, I'm just trying to make sure because you brought that one. Okay, next one is, read the background material for the meeting. We do that. So check, right? Consent agenda. If a board member has a question or comment on a consent agenda item, call the TA and get the question answered before the meeting. We do that. Not just on phone calls, right? We know to do
So
it.
I just want, can I just make one point on that one? So sometimes I purposely ask the question in a public meeting, even though I know the answer, so that the public knows the answer.
Yeah.
So that is my only, I don't know how to avoid doing that. I just want to, usually I don't ask a question unless I know the answer.
I think one of the things that we need to do when, and I guess it may fall under planning a realistic agenda, don't put something on the consent agenda that, you think may generate a question. If it's something that there's value in talking about publicly, like tonight, you had the issue with regards to the new revised contract for MTC. That's a win, right? And you could have just approved it and moved on to that, but I think it's good for the public to
That's
understand.
exactly why I would do it. I would've done it even if we weren't making it.
Exactly. So it's those type of things that, so.
Yeah.
I think in being realistic about what we think may have value to discuss, at least briefly.
But I don't think there should be a limit on anybody's ability to ask a question, Chelsea, just like the one you mentioned here, to say, I'm asking it because I want clarification,
Oh,
make sure that
absolutely.
the public hears it.
Yeah.
Hopefully that won't be.
Well, look what you did tonight with
30-minute
consent
discussion.
agenda. Instead of holding 12 items,
Yeah.
you held for consent agenda actually acted the way that it should.
I think people will be judicious about that, so it should kind of limit it.
Okay, now there's a parenthetical at the end of this one that says corrections to minutes. Okay, we've got a really good minute taker, really good. We don't have any corrections. I think it takes longer when each person is sending the corrections to either her or Mark, and then you gotta come back and you gotta see what everybody else did. I don't think we should do
But
that.
why not have a process that says individually provide corrections and have Mark, for example, be the assessor there that says, I've got, 43 Scrivener's errors corrections, nothing substantial, so let's approve the minutes as amended.
Most of your corrections lately have not been substantive.
Yeah.
You're changing the tense of a verb, there was a name was spelled wrong,
Period.
And anything that's substantive, we can talk about. But I
And
think
there's
that-
never 43 either. That's to me, this one's not a big issue to do what we're doing.
I agree.
If there were 43, different story, but it's
I
not
agree.
gonna be 43.
But send it to one source, have it corrected, and approve as amended.
Okay, well, you're saying yes, you're saying that, you're saying yes to Sam, I'm saying leave it,
I leave it the
leave it
same.
alone.
Leave it as is.
Yeah,
Chelsea?
I actually would say have it sent into market. They're just Scrivener's errors ahead of the meeting and handle it that way, or at least try it and see if it is not annoying for him to deal with.
It's my approach.
Okay, so if we do that, then we're not gonna see it again. We're gonna leave it up to Mark to get it right? So this is what we want. He'll say, he'll make the changes and they're ready to be.
So I've got to be the gatekeeper
Yeah,
and
but-
say, you know what, this is substantive, and I
Yeah.
think the board should.
that's the problem, because sometimes we change, not often, but sometimes we actually reword a sentence because
Correct.
the intent isn't right.
I was
So,
misquoted or whatever.
right, so are you suggesting we leave that up to Mark, or send the change to him, and if he thinks it's okay?
I'm
What if he
No, I'm
doesn't?
saying like spelling errors and like grammatical stuff. Because we sit there and we listen to, this is spelled wrong on this line, this is spelled wrong on, like that kind of stuff, I would just have Mark fix.
We could save anything that we thought was substantive and not send it to Mark and say I was misquoted
Right.
here and like this update.
Okay, so we agree, we'll send him grammatical.
But I think that you should let me know if you've got a change that you feel is substantive.
Sure.
Because we will not put the minutes on the consent agenda. We'll put them under other matters to talk
Okay.
about so that we're not clogging up the consent agenda with them.
And I think what we described is gonna take more time than what we're doing, and I think you've got plenty on your plate to, without adding this, but that's just one person's opinion.
Or can we send it to Bridget to do it?
I don't care who does it so much.
Bridget's being paid a flat
Yeah.
amount per minute.
She is, you
Per
know,
hour,
yeah,
per hour.
it's per hour.
But it's a limit on the hours, right? Isn't that what you guys decided last year?
Oh, right.
No.
No,
Well,
it's
yeah.
by the hour, the
If
minute.
the meeting is 3 hours, then she gets paid for 3 hours, 6 hours. I think that's how it came out to. Because it's like 50.
You know what? I'll take the minute. You guys can send them to me and I'll update them. And we can try it and see how it works. You just have to get them to me by Sunday night.
You got,
Yeah.
I think that's even a worse idea. So,
But again, I don't think there's a ton of grammatical errors that we're
No.
finding, so I don't think it's gonna take her an hour.
Like I said, it's minor in nature, and, if it's something of substance, then it'll be on the agenda for discussion.
Yeah.
If it's not, if as Ms. Malinowski's described in Scrivener's errors, then those can be corrected and we can put it on the consent agenda. So if it's not on the consent agenda, it's something we're gonna have to talk about.
So when are you gonna want, because we typically don't get the packet until Thursday, Friday before meeting. And you've already, where are you gonna put it at that point? Because you're not gonna know if it should be on consent or if it shouldn't,
You're gonna have to get the minutes more in advance.
which could delay potentially, could create an issue potentially with getting them done if something
We're
comes
gonna
up within the 45
you're making my
days.
case.
Well, I
So
can read
keep
it.
going.
I know,
So
again. Again, tonight was a prime example. A minute got held, Chelsea had one change. It took us an extra
And then
30
Andrew had-
seconds.
Then Andrew had one.
Right,
Yeah,
so
so
it took a
honestly,
minute,
I wasn't
ultimately.
gonna, I didn't hold
He
it
wouldn't
because
have
mine
said
was
that
so
if she had
small.
done what she did.
Right, so ultimately, you're talking a minute versus sending something to Mark, and Mark doing this and doing
And we
this.
spent 7 minutes talking about how we
And
make this process
with-
faster.
with
No, I-
luck, if we have shorter meetings and more concise minutes, there will be less to do there too.
Well, we're not gonna have a shorter meeting if you don't get off this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Okay, keep it like it is. Is that the consensus?
Yes.
Okay,
there we go.
all right.
All right.
We discussed it well, right? Okay, set a time limit for meetings, example, not more than 4 hours. Okay, what does everybody think?
I wouldn't go, I'd go max of 4. I think that's,
4 sounds good to me too.
Yeah,
I suggested
yeah.
4.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
so everybody agree 4, and then, if we start 6:30, we're gonna be done by 11, but we could put 11 in.
And it's
too.
like town meeting, if there's a topic that's under discussion, we could
Yeah.
finish that topic.
Yeah, something like that.
Hopefully it won't be an issue, but
What about not more than 4? I would just leave it at 4, I guess.
yeah, let's try.
I don't want to
Yeah.
start getting, up to discretion of the board, I think we just need to set it and be done.
Okay, all right, everybody agree?
Yep.
Okay. Put presenters, department heads on early agenda. I think we all
Already
agree
do
with
that.
that, right?
Yep.
Be considerate of them. My gosh, they've worked all day and let's get them out of here.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we do that tonight. Okay, establish a time limit with presenters in advance when planning the agenda. So that's what you said, right, Chelsea?
It is, yeah.
Because the agenda and background material are all available to the board and public ahead of the meeting, presentations made at the meeting may be reviewed. So I agree that we should definitely work with the presenters in advance and keep it short and sweet.
I agree.
But I would also ask people to think of it in terms of the structure of what they present, use the executive summary approach. Give me the 1-page or 2-page summary of what you want to get across. And then the full package is in the packet that people can review and people can ask questions. But basically, one slide, my rule of thumb is 3 minutes per slide. If you're talking fairly fast, and people tend to pack slides too much anyway. So a couple of slides max, if they're doing PowerPoint, and tell us what you want us to know, and let's move on.
What about like a 5-minute limit on presentations? I just think about somebody that doesn't come to us, and this is their one chance a year to come to us, to tell them, keep it brief. But I think if you give them 5 minutes, and that going in, you have 5 minutes for a presentation, you pack it with what the most important things that you want to get
They
across.
would
to
have
the
no, they would have to pack it or they're not gonna get it done. So
Correct.
You just say it's 5 minutes, you
5
decide what
minutes
you want in
and-
your 5 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah, and then questions, and.
But again, more extensive material in the packet if they want to
Agreed.
provide back.
So
And we do read the stuff.
an example of where I thought it was a pretty concise summary of a complicated issue was the other night, the gentleman from Perry, Par. Gave a pretty concise, there was a whole water study, capital plan. They gave a pretty concise study summary of that
Yeah.
complicated issue. Ones on the other end of the spectrum that were very entertaining and educational, but went on too long. Auditor, and
Okay.
But in all
OPEB
fairness,
and-
you have brand new auditors.
you're right, okay.
And so I
yeah.
think that setting the table, I do not expect them the next time they come in front of you to be
Okay.
here for as
Yeah,
long.
and
Yeah.
the ADA study that we
Yeah.
had last
Very
was
long.
very long.
And the tax classification presentation each year. That's
Yes,
stuff that we've heard, 23 years in a row kind of thing.
Yeah.
So let's get to the bottom line.
Just give us the numbers. What's the
Yeah,
split?
what does it
What's the
mean?
tax
That's
rate?
right.
Okay, so I think 5 minutes is a little short. You're not gonna get the
I think
water
it's kinda
study.
short.
The water thing could not have been boiled down to 5 minutes. I don't care what it
Okay.
is, right? So maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
5 to 10.
yeah,
Okay.
And
That's fair.
I think some review beforehand, where a Mark or Vanessa sort of listens to what the proposed, what are you going to talk
And
about?
give some suggestions too.
Suggests, how do you get it into the 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah, but let them know they can put whatever they would like
Yeah.
within the packet.
And reinforce that people do read the packets.
They do.
Right. Again, the presentation is 5 to 10 minutes, but you can put as much information in the packet as you think you want to, knowing that, the board has an obligation to read the material.
Yeah.
So.
And we will read it.
Yep.
We're readers. So. All right, the next one deals with the length of minutes. We know that they're too long. And it's not Bridget's fault. Bridget, I know you listen to this. It's just the nature of the beast with COVID and everything being recorded. But you go back and listen to it and you just tend to, you go back and repeat it 2 or 3 times. till You get it right, right? So we know they need to be truncated. So I think we should agree on a process where we work with Bridget on, what she really needs to put in minutes. We know what the rules are to cut them down. She wants to cut them down. But, I've seen this over and over since COVID. You got the whole thing there, you can listen to it, you can transcribe a meeting if you want to, and that's what we get sometimes. Not Bridget.
So Katie Berry is, and she's done our minutes, she's excellent at distilling things down. I gave her, I don't know, 2.5 pages of minutes or something. She made it to 3/4 of a page. She didn't take away anything that was necessary in the meeting and the context and things like that. But I'm happy to have her work with Bridget so that we can try and make sure that the minutes have what we need and what the board, again, it's a balance,
It is.
So I know I'm in the minority on this to some level. I think,
Wait a minute, that's my position.
I know, Sam, I'm taking your position for this one. So as long as Zoom continues, I'm good with that. But I can tell you, over the years, as I've gone back and tried to read through minutes to figure out how something happened or specifically what a vote was, and the minutes are just, the board took a vote of this.
Yeah.
I think I'm okay with this because you can go to the transcript on Zoom, and on YouTube, and you can get what you want, totally fine. But if that goes away, I think a lot of people may not have the time to watch our meetings, but they read our minutes, and I think it's very important that our minutes are as informative. And again, I know I'm in the minority on this, I'm trying to
You're
show.
not totally,
No,
I hear you.
Yeah.
I think there's a compromise here. So I still think they can be cut down some, right? And again, Bridget, you do a great job on these
Amazing.
minutes. I do not think this is a criticism of you at all. This is just widespread. There's still, I think, a way of not saying, well, Lisa said this and Chelsea said that and Kathy said that, and we said the same thing.
Right, agreed. Agreed.
To truly get to the point of, what was really important in that conversation, they discussed this and they had a problem with this. So I still think Katie can help,
Just so
cut
that
down some.
people can understand how you got to where you got to, the decision that you got to, so that just the salient points that led up to the decision that the board made.
Agreed.
But Lisa, I strongly agree with you in the sense that I think the YouTube recording is an important resource. And I think there's great value in our collectively, maybe through Jay and now his team, working to make sure that we've got a comprehensive library of those recordings, because I sometimes have trouble finding some of those meetings out there on YouTube. And I think it's important to do what we need to do to make sure those are available and indexed somehow so people can go out and find that on YouTube. Maybe there's another structure that we use for that. But again, having that backup detail, I think, is critical.
Yeah.
Often, as we've seen.
Well, I think we're creating quite a library.
Yeah.
Of
It's great,
these
though.
meetings. It is
It
great.
is. so helpful.
Absolutely great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you'll ask Katie to work with Bridget. Bridget needs to get the confidence that she can cut some of the stuff out. Let's just help her. My guess is she's spending many more hours than we think she is putting these minutes together. And therefore, not necessarily being paid fairly for what she's doing too. So this should help that.
Right.
Okay. All right, next one is establish a reasonable time in advance for one public comment. Okay, does everybody agree we're going to do one at the front at this point going
I
forward?
think so, because
Okay, so starting next
it's
meeting?
burdensome on people to have to wait around for 3 or 4 hours to get public comment at the end. And so
But if they miss it at the beginning,
Yeah.
that's their
I know.
only shot. That's my only concern.
Okay, so
I
what do
don't
you
think we have a lot that, it's not like people come at the beginning and at the end. You have different people mostly at the beginning versus the end, because some join, they're not there for now we're going to cut it down to 4 hours. I think if we had an hour and a half meeting, I'd agree with one public comment. I think we should still keep it.
So you want to keep it at both ends?
I do.
Okay, do we want to cut it down to 3 to 5 minutes per person?
Yes.
I think that does make sense.
Yeah. I
So everybody agree? So we'll
agree.
keep them on both ends.
Yeah.
And but we're going to limit the comments to things that are not on the agenda, is what he says here,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
And we're not, we're not going to comment back, and then we're going to say, well, we'll look into it, whatever we need to do. But it's going to be 3 to 5 minutes, and we got to.
Should we update our policy for that? Or is this something, Kathy, that you're
I-
going to announce?
I
It's
think
crazy.
this-
for
I think some of
everyone
the
else.
guys, I think some of these things should be codified.
I agree.
I think that one should be, so no one, questions it. That the planning board meeting that Ms. Bowman was at, they, made some comments, about our meetings that, that people don't have a chance to speak. And I think to myself, what are you talking about? We're supposed to let somebody come in and rip all night long when everything's done. And they were comparing to, when we have our hearings, people get to talk about, I thought, well, we don't have hearings, that's not what we're doing. So I didn't think it was a real fair, comparison, but that's what got said there. So yeah, I think, so let's do front, let's do them both, but let's limit it to 3 to 5 on items not on the agenda.
So then,
And we will put it in our policies, update that, but we'll also make sure we tell people.
Yeah.
Till they get used to it.
I think it's fair.
Yeah.
okay, so then the next follow-on comment from that is, and I think what Peter was saying at the meeting is, what is the policy on public? Someone comes, they want to talk about an item that's on the agenda. So under this policy, that means they should not speak at the beginning of the meeting.
Correct.
They should wait until the agenda comes up and then
Raise your hand.
raise their hand.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's the same 3 to 5 minutes
That's-
expectation.
That's a
Still
fair
the,
point.
For the public, I think so.
yeah,
I think that's a fair point.
I think 5 minutes is a long time.
I can talk 5 minutes like nothing. Mark.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but
And we've had
five
some,
So
of
you think it
you
should be
in a
closer to
row is
3?
a long time.
Mr. Leck, could you talk 5 minutes?
three for
He's
Lisa,
very
5 for
succinct.
others.
Yeah,
very hard not to.
yeah.
But we've had some lengthy comments
We have.
from people, but again, those often are things that they have, a PowerPoint presentation that you could say, send that in advance. We'll put it on the agenda and give us the executive summary version, and we'll talk about it.
But you normally don't have those under public comment.
Normally don't.
So
Yeah.
this is consistent though, I think, Andrew, if what you just said, if we're gonna do it under public comment for non-items, it should carry over to
Sure.
the agenda items
Agenda
as well.
items, right.
Yeah, for consistency. Good point, Andrew.
Okay, so you agree?
Yeah.
Yep.
3 to 5?
Yeah.
Both ends, non-agenda items. If you want to speak to agenda item, you raise your hand, you get 3 to 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And this one, we're going to update our official policy on to make it clear.
and I think it does make sense also too, where comments are, the chair always has the
Yeah.
discretion where comments are highly repetitive.
Or not on point, or whatever.
We don't get any of those.
I used to, years ago, go to school committees a lot, and they would do exactly what you said. They listened to public comment and never said, what was that? I didn't understand. Why don't you, I go, why, in my
Yeah.
mind, why don't you reply? Now I get it,
It's hard not to sometimes.
Yeah, it is, but they would just sit there and I didn't understand it, but now I do. Okay. Next one is ask the town administrator to draft motions in advance and copy them to the select board.
I don't think we have a problem
I
with
don't either.
motions. I mean,
That would be
we're
too
pretty.
The only one I
I,
can think.
I
of-
do at 11:30,
much.
I-
but if we're
the
gonna stop
only-
at 10:30, I'm good.
Yeah.
We
The
are.
only ones where I could think it's helpful are for some of the hearings, the public hearings. These poll hearings or approval of licenses. We sometimes do, where it's important to include in the motion a certain time limit on a
Details.
license or something like that.
Yeah.
So why don't we leave
That
it
is-
to Mark's discretion? Take a look at what we're going to do. If you
Sure.
think
Yeah.
It's something that would help us to draft, it, make sure we don't miss
Complicated
something,
ones.
you'll draft it for us.
It's a
Okay.
complicated motion,
Yeah.
but you've got to get it right legally somehow.
Sam's gotten very good at making motions.
I think you guys.
That's another question. I mean, in terms of making motions, there are some boards that actually make motions in seconds in exactly the same way.
Every
which
time.
Expedites the process.
And the minutes are easier.
I think that makes sense. I don't actually care about who does it, but it seems to me it's easier to have a process that says person A makes the motions, person B seconds the motions, and then you vote. Unless there's some,
And you could switch off every meeting, so everybody gets a chance.
We
I
do
don't-
that in advisory life, especially, like on budget stuff, just to keep it rolling.
Yeah.
and I don't care if I never get a chance. I think it's useful to keep it moving to expedite.
It does, it will keep it moving if you've got a bunch, if you've got a bunch.
But I think there are times when there's a member on the board who's really invested in an issue
Something.
and they want to make the motion, or they want, and
I
so
don't
there
have
will
those
be
feelings.
those asterisks, but yeah.
But anybody can choose to change
Sure.
it if they want to.
I just think this one's a big deal.
Neither.
I'd not be unhappy if
Overall.
I never made a motion. So,
All right, managing the ceremonial stuff to not take up more time than it needs to pick up. So everything he says there's true, so he's suggesting that we put those kind of things on less full agendas, that makes sense, right? If we can, if it's not time sensitive, and then rotate among the board who actually speaks to whatever we're trying to.
But I think we ought to keep doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
That's-
I do too,
that's
and I know
important.
Lisa
Yeah.
made that clear, she thought it, so I think we all agree, absolutely it's important, right?
A lot of times, so much of your agendas are negative, right? You're either not making somebody happy or you're taking some action that has some ramification. You know, a lot of this stuff is feel good, you know, whether it's, you know, appointing a new police officer or recognizing somebody for the, you know, they're usually fairly brief and it's a little bit of a feel good, so.
Sets a nice tone.
So I think the way that we handled it just at the beginning of this meeting with the new student police officer.
Yeah.
Was a perfect example where I don't think we, I'm trying to remember what we did, but I don't think we had a lengthy discussion about it. I think one person spoke to the board. I definitely have felt that last year, my first year on the board, there were times where some of these welcoming people, I would go towards the end of it. I have absolutely
Nothing
nothing.
to
I
say.
can't think of a new way of saying it. Thank you for volunteering for this committee and.
Plus it was Zoom and it was tough too. Very, very tough.
But important and, you know,
Right, so we agree with the price, we're going to try to put it on non-busy agendas if we can, if it makes sense. Okay. Last one, I think we all agree with, you know, if it's, you know, if you're just gonna ditto what someone said, you know, we probably like to ditto, right?
maybe
But, you know, if you're
Ditto
gonna ditto,
Ditto.
try not to ditto, if that's all you're doing. Yeah. You agree, Chelsea?
Yes.
Ditto.
It did. She missed her opportunity. That would have been perfect.
Okay.
All right, so I think we're in good shape here. And I think the only one who's going to update policy is the public comment. Still going to be born after, and we're going to do 3 to 5 minutes on non-agenda items. And then we're going to also limit the agenda items. Raise your hand to 3 to 5 minutes.
So here's the interesting thing when you talk about updating the policy. I had brought with me from several communities, basically how the board operates, the operation of the board, how you handle certain things, how you address things, how you know, how the board, you know, operates meetings, manages meetings. And I will not name the particular selectmen, but really, they didn't want to do that. We know how to do that. We know what we're, you know, so the only thing that we ever put in the policy was public comment.
That's it, that's our policy.
And really, we don't have a policy that talks about how the board operates, how you handle certain issues, how you do certain things. I'm happy to circulate that again to the board. It may be, I know, it may be a little bit outdated, but it gives you an idea of a format if the board is interested in considering something like that, because a lot of these things will fit into the narrative of that.
I think
So
that
I
is-
can send it back around
Yeah,
again,
please do.
you can have an idea.
I think
and
you're
then-
gonna get a different, you are clearly gonna get a different reaction this time than you did. last
No,
time.
I understand, but at least that way, not only the board members, but the public and presenter, everybody understands how this is going to work. for your
That might
committee.
even be useful for other
committees.
committees and
It
boards.
could
They
be,
may be able to
it could
take
be a
parts of it.
template, you know,
Yeah.
for other people to use as to establishing their procedures as well. Sure.
Anyway,
Okay, I will do that.
All right, so now let's get into the goals that we established. So we've got our spreadsheet that basically we've got 28 goals that we agreed on. We can still do the other ones, but we agreed that these are the ones we're going to prioritize for fiscal year 23. So I'm looking for suggestions about what the next step is here to start trying to achieve these goals. We've got a spreadsheet, it's got 2 columns, staff, lead person, and the select board liaison. Is that what we want to do? Do we want to select a SB liaison tonight for each one of these, some of these?
could we, just as a suggestion, I didn't bring it with me, Ken did. So, is it useful to maybe everybody kind of pick what they might like to do? be a liaison to, forward it to Mark.
Yep,
And
And then he
then-
compiles them, sends it back out, and
Yeah.
we see where there's no one,
Right.
and where there's more than one.
Right, if there's more than one, then the board could certainly discuss it, you know, at another meeting, and then, I think some of these, you're gonna get one person, honestly, 4 people that put them on there and have an interest in doing it,
Yeah.
so, again, that's a suggestion.
Is the idea that because there's 5 goals under each of the 5 headings that we each would. Okay, so under,
So 5 people, so, let's see, 5 people, 3 people would have 5, and, 2 people would have 5, and 3 people would have 6, to get to 28.
So would your suggestion, Andrew, I think the point you're trying to make is,
Yeah.
so do you want everybody to pick what their first choice would be and their second choice would be in each category? Are you looking, or are you looking for specifically, so I may not want to do anything in the first category, but I may want to do 2 things in the second.
Yes, I don't think you've got to limit, I don't think you've got to say you've got to take
Just
one.
put what you're interested
So
in
what you're-
doing.
let's see
and
where it all
Alright,
flows
yeah.
out, and
See what
maybe
flows out.
it may come out that we really end up with a pretty good spread as far as what we want to do.
I think the majority of it will probably be taken care of that way.
Trees, Lisa,
there you go.
3.3, trees.
There we go. Chelsea, you want to add anything to that? Sorry, we keep forgetting.
So are we limiting the number that we put ourselves down for, or no?
No, I don't think so.
No, we're just saying what we're interested in.
So Chelsea, the night that I was in Greece and you chaired the meeting, you probably, because I felt pretty ignored too, just so you know. But it's, you know, you're sitting here looking at everybody and
Yeah.
then you're on the screen, so we're not ignoring you on purpose, I promise you.
No, I know.
It's just we're like looking down the table.
That's right, we're
Yeah.
looking at each other and,
Yeah.
number 2.
And then, of course, Chelsea, we know you would speak up as well. If
Yes.
that's not said.
Yeah,
Okay, right.
yeah, don't have a
Yeah, so
problem with that.
next is
I just keep
business.
echoing, so I think somebody must have their volume on in the room or something, because when I talk, it like, I'm getting feedback.
Okay, well,
No.
you're fine to us.
There's no, yeah,
Really?
the only.
There's nothing?
The only volume that is up besides you is the owl. So I don't know.
All
I'm
right,
not sure
I don't know
why.
something.
We're not hearing an echo at
I think
all.
Kathy's on.
Well, it says join audio and it's,
No, Kathy.
No, I
Kathy
don't
didn't
mean your
even-
audio. I don't mean your speaker. I mean somebody's computer volume must be on.
Well, mine's not.
Yeah,
Mine's
my
out.
computer
Yeah.
volume is all the
Okay.
way off.
we're almost
Anyways,
done.
I guess I'm good.
Okay, so everybody, you're gonna take the spreadsheet and put your initials in the SB liaison column as far as the ones that you remember.
When do you want this to mark up?
ASAP. So let's say, today is Tuesday, how about by the end of the week?
End of the week.
By end of Friday, end of the
Sure,
day,
5:15. Okay.
about 1 o'clock,
Yeah.
12 o'clock? right?
Whenever you say.
I'm joking.
Yeah,
And then they're working on the person next week.
it'll be the Monday, and then what we'll do is we'll assign, I'll work on assigning the staff
Yeah, so
lead.
you do that piece of it,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Let's see,
Yeah.
you know best on that. And then each person will take this and look at this as far as what you're gonna do specifically.
Right, and then and then each select board member will have to meet with each staff lead, for their issue and
Map out a
develop one
plan.
of those sheets.
Yeah.
And then once this is all set, the board has adopted them, this will all go up on the website.
Perfect.
Okay, 9:30. Okay, so we are going to ask for public comment again.
Mr. Litigan,
Come on, Mr. Lit.
Oh,
You gotta have something.
please.
well, I guess I can, since you decided to leave me for the end.
I just said we don't have repeat customers in the beginning and the end of the meeting, Mr. Lit.
All right, so you had your chance.
Okay, fine.
No,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Andrew,
You say whatever you want. So one thing that wasn't clear to me in your new comment policy is how that works with your consent agenda. For example, at the beginning of this meeting, I had a question about an item that's on the consent agenda, but we ordinarily don't pause when you're doing that. So you may want to think about how that works. The second thing I noted, I know everyone's really happy with our new legal services. But according to the markup, it was a 30% increase in rate, which just sort of flew by.
You're talking about the hourly rate? Is hourly rate?
No, the monthly thing went from 7,000 to 9,000 a month.
Yeah, because they've added in the labor to it.
Okay, well, I just noticed that. And the third thing, and it's the last one, in terms of the YouTube library, I had suggested in the past, and no one has bothered to act on it, that the right thing to do is to link the YouTube things YouTube videos to the minutes on the website. So you go to the minutes page where you collect minutes for a meeting, you should be able to click and get the appropriate YouTube video.
It's
It's the
interesting.
simplest way to solve the problem.
Good idea.
It's actually very good idea. Thank you, Tim. All right, any other public comment? Let's see, we've got Marcy in our, so hello, Marcy. She's not raising her, so I think we're done. All right, and it is 9:30.
I'd like to, I move to adjourn.
This is his new thing.
Would you like to be our permanent adjournment?
Okay, so. just
Second.
quietly. Okay. Roll call vote, Chelsea.
Aye.
Quick as I, Lisa.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
Andrew.
Aye.
5-0, adjourn. Good night,
Go
everybody.
for it.
Good night,
Thank
thank you.
Well, I just, at the
I will
end
give you this
of this
computer.
throw, I have a unique perspective